Good evening and welcome to the October 14th, 2021 meeting of the Town of Shrewsbury Finance Committee. I'm Mark Adler, your cruise director, and we're going to go directly into consideration of the minutes of September 16th. Has everyone had a chance to look at them if they wanted to? Anybody have any comments, questions, amendments, or problems?
Move the minutes, move to approve.
Anna has a motion, Carlos has everyone has a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn? No.
Not quite yet.
All right, then we shall instead open the public hearing on the October 18th, 2021 special town meeting warrant. It'll be at Oak Middle School Auditorium on the 18th. We'll just start, I guess, with Article 1, if you're ready on that. Mr. Mizikar.
Mr. Adler, I would just, are you going to open the public hearing?
Yeah, we can do that first. Is there a motion to
I'll make a motion
open
to open the public hearing.
the public hearing?
Second.
And Carlos, no, Dennis, sorry, I'm going to give you that second.
I didn't do that one, but I'll take it.
I don't want to have a fight over
It was
this.
seconded.
All right, all in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing is open. Welcome, everyone, to our glorious public hearing. Starting with Article 1.
Thank you so much. Good evening, members of the Finance Committee. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening and discuss the 16 articles that we've prepared for the special town meeting on October 18th at the Oak Middle School Auditorium. Remind town meeting members that we've distributed packets to them. Should have received them in the mail today for the most part. They were mailed out on Friday, but unfortunately, we're only making to inboxes today, and we also have those documents prepared on the town meeting page and accessible through our website for anyone else who's interested in seeing the packets. Article 1 of the special town meeting establishes an insurance trust fund. The purpose of this trust fund is to provide some stability and consistency in our budgeting process. We've transitioned several of our insurance lines over to a plan design that has deductibles. And our intention would be to regularly add funds into this trust to pay for those deductibles as needed. That would provide stability rather than having to budget the full deductible in each operating budget and some years turning it back and some years spending it. It'll also allow us flexibility after the end of the close of any fiscal year, as any claims may run out as we pay for injured on duty claims or workers' compensation claims. Since we lose access to funds on June 30th, this would turn into no year dollars, and we can spend them appropriately within accordance of our deductibles and our general policy. So this would establish an account to do that.
Any questions or comments from the Finance Committee? I have one. So how would the transition go? Because this is not really a new thing, it's just a new way, if I understand it. So how would we transition the funds and the management of them?
Sure. So we will be proposing to add some funds into this account through Article 2 of this warrant. The way that we've budgeted, or since we need to add additional funds, this prevents us from having to add additional funds into the general operating budget at town meeting. So this will be satisfied through Article 2 for this fiscal year.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Yeah, Rajiv?
What would be the impact of the budget on this article and the next one in
Sure.
terms of the funding?
Yeah, so it's not a significant amount of money relative to the overall operating budget. That's about $137 million. In total deductible exposure, our biggest deductible comes in the injured on duty, which is workers' compensation for police and fire, and we have a $45,000 annual deductible on that. When it comes to our automobile deductibles, property liability, we have a $1,000 deductible. And then our professional liability, which covers errors, omissions, and actions of staff and board members is $7,500. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not a ton of money, but if we, have good years, it will lessen the overall burden on the amount that we have to fund insurance with.
So this year's budget has those amounts in it, these amounts which you just mentioned. Instead of,
In totality, no, not at this point. We are proposing to add funds into the article. We're a little bit short in this year's budget because we brought the Beal School on. So when we started the budget process, yes. But the net after this town meeting is we still need to add money into Article 2 to ensure that we have enough funds on hand to cover our premiums and any deductibles that we may incur.
thank you.
Dennis?
Just to follow up on that, if we weren't to do it now, we would still need to probably raise that money. So
Correct.
it's really not adding to the budget per se, it's just when we're putting the money in place. So
That's
put it in
correct.
now versus when we do this later in the year for next town meeting.
Yep.
And appropriate the funds that we're short, so we're just
That's correct.
refunding it.
Yep.
Okay, so it's not a big hit on the, great. Thank you.
Anyone else on the committee? Anyone visiting from the public today? Wants to have some say on this? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on then to Article 2.
So Article 2 does provide funding for the account that we established in Article 1 for those purposes. We have a similar account that was established in 2000, but it's much more limited in its scope and purpose. So we'd prefer, we are requesting to move all the funds out of that existing account, which is $42,047.55, and then raise an additional $55,000 from taxation, and put it into this fund. That will give us a good start on the deductibles that we have incurred and may incur for the rest of the year.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone on the committee have any questions, comments, or problems with what's going on with Article 2?
No.
Now this, Kevin.
I didn't.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Dennis.
Just real quick, so it sounds to me like what we're trying to do is make budgeting easier going forward by moving these accounts around. I think we've done it, I think, with the fund for the override, et cetera. So these are just ways to improve our budgeting going forward.
Yep. I mean, otherwise we'd have to budget, say, on a good year, we'd over budget by like $65,000 or $70,000 just in case we incur a deductible. So let's say for the rest of this year, we don't incur a deductible. We'll have this funding sitting in there. We won't have to touch it. Maybe the following spring we'll add a little bit, but yeah, it'll just,
Yes.
we won't be adding funds to turn them.
Kind of smoothing out the.
Yep.
Anyone else on the committee? Now, Kevin, this is contingent on passage of Article 1, so I assume in the event of defeat of Article 1, then we would want to defeat Article 2.
That's correct.
Okay. Anyone from the public want to chime in on the glorious contents of Article 2? All right, thank you very much. Let's move on then to Article number 3.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, before we get into too deep of a dive on the specifics of Article 3, we've prepared and presented in front of you, and I have up on the screen our balance sheet, our master balance sheet that we call it, that lays out the revenues, which are on the first page, which is up on the screen right now, and on the second page, our summary of expenses. I thought it would just be a good opportunity to get too deep into the specifics of the changes that we're making to kind of provide an overview to the Finance Committee of those changes kind of at a higher level. So I'm really pleased, and this is certainly a unique opportunity given a number of unique circumstances, mainly the benefit of the funding of the pension system and the Proposition 2.5 override, where with regards to taxation, we will be reducing in a gross amount by about $1,809,000. We'll be reducing $503,000 from The tax exempted levy, which is relative to funds that specifically and can only be raised to pay debt service, and we can get into those details. We are reducing $1.3 million from the total amount that was allowed to be raised under the Proposition 2.5 override. And we've also, through the assessor's office, revised our new growth number upwards from 856 to $1 million. And that's very common as we have the opportunity, the assessor's office has the opportunity to move through the new growth certification process between March, when we really start to finalize the budget, and now we always have better information, and this is a reflection of that. So again, that's a net reduction in the total taxation that we're going to ask taxpayers to pay starting on their third quarter bill. And our estimate right now with these overall changes is that we'll reduce the impact to the average single-family home between $120 and $125 per year. As I make my way, continue down through the revenue side of the master balance sheet, we are utilizing funds that are on hand from sewer revenues and water revenues in independent articles. We are proposing the use of an additional $300,000 in free cash. We've identified a source of funds from the Commonwealth known as Transportation Network Companies funding, which comes in from the Commonwealth as a surcharge on Uber and Lyft-like rides that we'll propose to spend through an article, and then a special opportunity to spend the proceeds of the sale of real estate of Centec North of $2 million. So as I compare these changes to what we did at the annual town meeting, as you can see at the bottom, we're proposing to increase spending overall by a little bit less than $2.3 million, but we're reducing total taxation by over $1.7 million, which will benefit the taxpayer. And I'll get into all these details as we move through the rest of these next few articles. On the expense side of things, you'll, on the next page and now on the screen, you'll see in the top line that we're reducing the total budgeted operating budget by $1.7 million. This reduction comes from the net result of reducing the pension system by over $2 million and making some other changes. And then you can see where we are attributing the expenses of the water and sewer enterprises to their particular expense categories. So those numbers for sewer and water match the revenues that we've identified above. And then at the bottom, you'll note roughly $2.4 million that are identified through other warrant articles, and those fall really just as they are in other detailed warrant articles that we'll certainly go through before we work our way through the end of the warrant. So we do have a balanced budget. I will point to fiscal year 22 annual town meeting where we're showing a deficit. That was the net result of our estimate for state aid and what actually came in, since state aid came in later in the year after our annual town meeting. So we just wanted to let that carry through to be accurate and update those numbers as they actually were. We obviously fixed that deficit as we went through this special town meeting process as well. So I can pause there if there are any overarching questions, or we can move to Article 3.
Yeah, I think it's good to pause at those inflection points when we can, assuming there's someone in the committee who wants to ask questions on it, just chime in. Anyone from the public on this stuff? Yeah, Jason, can you come to the mic, identify yourself, the usual routine?
Good afternoon, Jason Molina, 31 Wachusett Avenue. That chart that's on the screen now wasn't included in the presentation, so in the packet that got mailed, so I don't know if that can be made as available at town meeting. So I will have a question related to that. Is there an amount that is actually available that it's not tied up to, let's say, debt service or any other restricted categories that could be available should there be a proposition to do so, to say move those available funds to, say, additional stabilization funds, or to other departments that may be having a little more harder time after May, after we already had approved the budget, but realizing that you know, COVID is still with us here, and you know, you only know so much you know in May, and there are new actuals as we come through, right? So is there really anything available right now, rather than giving back that money and saying, what could we, if anything is available, retain to help our town further? You know, remember that the voters went to the ballot box and voted yes to fix our problems, not to check the box that said cash back. Right, so I'm hoping that there's a way to leverage it. I know there's there's always a good interest to give back money, but I don't know if this is the year to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Kevin, do you want to address that, or somebody else want to? That's fine.
I'd be happy to talk about those things. So first, with regards to departments, I, of course, as we worked on budget revisions, have met with department heads and understood their needs and had conversations with the school department. The Board of Selectmen, through their deliberations on this budget process, are making this recommendation, and I certainly support it. Based upon their conversations in the spring, they committed to the community to identify ways to use federal funds or other funds identified through the stimulus, the American Rescue Plan. So those are part of the overall financial picture, which I will attempt to describe to the committee this evening as we go through the details of Article 3. They're not subject to appropriation by town meeting. So that relieves pressure on what we need to raise from the taxpayers. And that was what the board committed to. And then I will say that conceptually, and I'll get to the specifics of Mr. Molina's questions, but conceptually, we're not foregoing the opportunity to raise these funds in the future. So just because, you know, we've established a levy ceiling that's $9.5 million greater than what was allowed under Proposition 2.5 through the override vote. And by only raising 8.2 million of that, doesn't forego our ability to raise that in the future. So conceivably, we would raise to the limit through next year's budget process. So to answer Mr. Molina's question, though, you can see in the fourth line down is the negative $1,306,424. If those funds were to be raised, that would take the town to its levy limit for the year.
Kevin, question about when you were just saying that that authority isn't taken away, that the override authority is there.
Yep.
That limit, that new number, that new ceiling, for want of a better term, that is the legal term, is going to be there. When we're formulating our budget for FY '23, the 2.5% above our tax levy, is that the 2.5% over this number, or is it 2.5% over what was allowed in the override?
It's 2.5% of the authorized levy limit in the previous year. So it's what was authorized through the override. So
And that's why we haven't foregone it,
That's
we've
correct.
just not taken it.
That's correct.
Okay. I think that's an important distinction.
It is, yeah.
For many years, before I was on this committee, I was always very concerned, because when times were tough, we'd try to take it to that maximum 2.5 limit, if for no other reason than just to say, we don't want to give up this chance, we'll find a way to make this money work. But if we only go to 2%, then the new 2.5% next year. But because we have this override authority for this 1 year, or this new limit set for this 1 year, we can go to 2.5% over that.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep, and on a more simpler basis, without the consideration of an override, consider the fact that a penny is an absolute number on the tax rate, and when we set the tax rate, we always fall in the middle of a penny, and so a penny may raise $60,000 in tax levy, but we can never exceed the limit. So every year we have a 30,000, 20,000, 40,000 that we can't raise because we can't add that next penny, because we'd go over our levy limit. So that's just what's happening here, but we always go back and recalculate from the base of the prior year. And I will say that there's nothing through this financial model that reduces the duration or efficacy of the commitments made through the override. This in no way shortens the duration that we anticipate, the commitment of 4 years. It does recognize the fact that taxpayers were likely to experience a tax bill impact of about $750,000, and now they're quote-unquote only looking at a $630 increase. So it's still a substantial increase to the payers.
Now, you said on the revenue side that we'll be taking $300,000 from free cash. That's a change in the special town meeting. Where's that coming from, or what's the genesis of that change?
So we'll get into the uses of those, but they are one-time capital uses, land acquisition and a capital improvement at a school. And that is based off of our certification of free cash for this year, which is $7.6 million.
But that we're dipping into free cash with this new commitment. Is this because of maybe I'm getting ahead of us, but is this because of something new that's come up since we budgeted, or is it because we certified at a different level?
No, it's because of new items that have arisen.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Dennis?
Giving back the money or not going to the full levy, that's not cutting services.
That's correct.
We're still funding all the services. And I do remember when we went through this whole process, we did talk about if we received additional funding than we budgeted for, different revenue, not funding, revenue, that we would be, they'd be looking not to go to the full levy because our numbers were based on what we thought we were gonna get that year.
Mm-hmm.
And this is to me, this is sort of, playing fair with everyone in the community. We haven't given up the levy. If we do need it, which I think is good, we could go back if something catastrophic, more COVID issues or whatever comes up. But, from my perspective, I think this is what we agreed to when we did the override, and, I really respect the selectmen, town manager, et cetera, for doing that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Anyone else on the committee or on the public on this? Okay, then let's get back on track.
Okay, so here are the details that underlie those changes with regards to the FY22 operating budget. You'll see that we're proposing to reduce the $1.7 million from the source of taxation. The largest change, again, is related to the full funding of the pension system and a revised funding schedule. So we're shifting $2.2 million from the original 3.3 that was dedicated to the pension system. And we're looking to make other changes, and I'll detail those out here for you, and happy to answer any questions. So we're proposing the additional we're proposing a second human resources coordinator position within the Office of the Town Manager. This position was originally slated to be created in fiscal year 23 in our original financial models that we used for the override, but given this opportunity and the challenges that we face, not negatively, but good challenges that we face in the personnel realm, and then hardships related to COVID-19 and managing those things and all the associated personnel policies related to it. We're seeking funding to fund this position for 7 months of the year, starting in November. So we're asking for $30,000. We're also accelerating the adoption of the planning and economic development function of the town as a separate standalone department. It currently falls under the directorship of the assistant town manager. So we're proposing to create the position of planning director, which would be a department head position, and seeking $5,200 for that change for the balance of the fiscal year, creating a second assistant town planner position that will aid in pursuing economic development endeavors and functions within the community, among other things, including managing the Community Preservation Act that was adopted earlier this year, or came into effect earlier this year, and assisting with affordable housing needs. We're proposing to increase stipends that are paid to the emergency management director and the deputy emergency management director, given additional responsibilities are related to COVID-19, climate change, grants management is the three primary areas. We are looking to shift $923,000 to other post-employment benefits. Other post-employment benefits essentially is health insurance for our retirees, and we have an unfunded accrued liability of nearly $30 million, so much like our pension system used to be. So this is shifting funds from the pension. We'll begin to talk about retirement and OPEB, two funding line items as reciprocal, and we'll shift funds back and forth from year to year depending on the needs of the pension system to ensure we retain our full funding status, and this gives us that flexibility and opportunity in the future. And then we're pleased to reduce the principal from Centec North by $305,000, which was the total amount that was budgeted since we closed on that property on September 28th. And the associated interest with that is the last item on this page of $46,000. And finally, we're able to reduce the interest on the Sherwood Middle School bonds by $152,000 due to the refunding and the achievement of 0.75% of interest on the balance of that, which will save the town over $1 million over the final 10 years of payment. So again, in aggregate, a reduction of $1.7 million. And I'm happy to answer any questions about those changes.
Anyone on the, thank you, Kevin. Anyone on the committee want to chime in or ask questions, delve deeper into this?
I'd just like to say that I'm happy to see the money going to OPEB as part of this.
Mm-hmm. I concur. Judy?
So I'm glad to see some of the changes. I'm coming with personnel because I do think that needs to happen. But I guess my question is, do we have a long-term plan as far as other departments that are going to be expanded and so forth? Because, you know, I remember when the position for planning director was created, it was like one position, and obviously it's grown to, you know, 2 or 3 people. I don't know, you can correct me, I don't know how many. So that's grown.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that it shouldn't have grown, that's not my point.
Yep.
And you bring on an HR person, a second one. So I'm just wondering, is there a map, or is there a plan for other departments that we may see over the next 3 to 5 years of expansion?
Sure. So we have had departments create 5-year staffing plans, and those 5-year staffing plans reflect their needs, not necessarily what we may be able to fund, but what they've projected. So we'd be happy to provide those documents or summary-like documents to the Finance Committee for a longer-term understanding, and also look forward to those conversations before we get into the budgeting process with some longer-term visioning discussions with you.
Okay. Yeah, so follow-up if I may, Mark?
Oh, yeah.
So that was going to be, so the process then for these coming to fruition, because I don't think I've been asleep at the wheel here, but it's sort of like these things are coming now during this discussion. I don't think we really have had, the Finance Committee has not been a part of the conversation. So you do have some plans, so you are going to bring those to the committee for further discussion about how you foresee departments changing in the future? Is that what you just
I'd
said?
be happy to, yep.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anyone else on the committee want to ask a question or make a comment on this? Anyone from the public like to speak on this article that we'll be considering? Okay. One more thing I just wanted to ask. There's nothing in here going to or coming from the school department budget. That is remaining neutral through this process. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, then we'll move on to Article the 4th in our public hearing.
So Article 4 proposes to clean up, coming up, Jeff, please. Just clean up some water funds, and I'll have DPW Director Jeff Howland describe the changes that we're proposing here.
Good evening, Jeff Howland, DPW Director. Under Article 4, we're proposing to transfer from 3 existing accounts that were appropriated but were unencumbered. All 3 of them come from water projects that were, or water main replacement projects that were completed. Some as long ago as probably 2010. So we're removing or trying to clean up old accounts, and we're putting it into the water system improvements. And it's really for to continuation of the unidirectional flushing program. So we want to remove the 3 old unencumbered warrant articles are $29,657 from an account that was created for the water main replacement on Grafton Street and Route 9, which I believe was completed in 2010 or 2012. The replacement of the water main in Francis Ave in the Edgemere section of town, which was completed sometime around 2017 or 18. And then the replacement of the water main on Gage Street, Maple Ave, and Oak Street, which was completed in 2013. And then we will take $250,000 from the water enterprise retained earnings account. And again, that is so to fund the unidirectional flushing program that we intend to continue with the remaining 4 zones that we have left this fall.
Thank you. Dennis?
Thank you. A quick question. These unencumbered accounts, does that mean you came in under budget for those projects?
So I know prior to, say, 2017, we appropriated money at town meeting and then put the projects out to bid. So we probably were overfunded on each account. Since then, we actually go to out to bid first and at least have a better number. So it might have been we guesstimate or have a pretty good number. Say 5,000 linear feet of pipe, and it may be 4,962 actually we install. So they're both, some were probably due to we overfunded the account, others were we just used items that we didn't actually need.
Yeah, no, okay, that's fine. So that's money that wasn't spent.
That is correct.
So my only question would be, some of these seem to have been there for a long time. How long should we be waiting to move that money back into the general fund? Because it seems like dead money.
So we're working better with the accounting office to try to clean these older accounts up. Some of these are, which we go back and try to figure out exactly what they were used for. Some of them just on the wording of the account. So we are trying to clean some of these up, but typically we wait at least 2 years after, because the way our contracts are written, the contractor doesn't receive his final retainage until 1 year after we deem it complete. So
That makes sense.
we usually wait at least, and then we usually wait at least a year after, just to make sure there's nothing else that comes in, because that come out of some of these accounts, we pay police detail. So we just want to make sure all of those are cleaned up before we
Great.
eliminate the.
Thank you. I just want to say, Dennis, you mentioned about getting the money back into the general fund, but this doesn't come to or from the general fund. This is segregated from that. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
This goes to the water enterprise account.
Let me clarify. I meant the water enterprise.
Right, and
Yes,
that's,
but
well, that in effect
clarification.
is the water general fund, the general fund for the water
That is
department.
correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Vikram, did you have something?
Just a follow-up question, Mr. Holland. Thank you for explaining the details as far as why we had this dead money. So just to follow up, the Water Enterprise Fund, is that now open for further projects that you have in future? How does that actually work, this particular fund?
So the water enterprise fund funds our water system.
Okay,
So it funds operation, it funds capital projects, it funds other things associated with the water department.
Mhm.
So because it's an enterprise account, we basically can spend what we anticipate revenues coming in for that year. But we're also, based upon the town's financial model, trying to also maintain a 5% like stabilization account within that for unexpected projects.
okay, thank you.
Judy?
Jeff, in previous years, we've had a lot of dialogue over the lost water, looking for the lost water. And the last couple of years, we really haven't talked about that. So is that, can you kind of catch us up? Is that an ongoing project? Is there money budgeted for it? And can you kind of catch us up? As I said, we haven't been talking about that lately.
So, Dan, do you want to comment on that? Do you want me to start?
I'd love to.
Sure. So I have Dan Rowley, Water Superintendent, and he probably better can articulate the projects that they are working on to try to figure out the unaccounted for water. It is an ongoing problem, no question. We're just not 100% convinced it's actually not a math issue, because we're not seeing a loss in the system per se. So I'll
Jeff,
have Dan come up to
you
explain.
could stay there if you want, and Dan can just come to the standing mic, if it's not gonna be too long.
I'll keep it brief. Dan Riley, Water and Sewer Superintendent. Great question on unaccounted for water. And obviously, you know, Shrewsbury has historically had a fairly high unaccounted for water ratio. And we calculate unaccounted for water typically once a year for our annual statistical report. It's actually a very comprehensive analysis, because we take into consideration things like firefighting, leaks, water main breaks. And so we've done really kind of a number of different things over the last probably 2 years to really nail this down. Number one, with the formation of DPW, we have a business management division, and we have a business management division manager and staff that are very actively looking at meters, meter issues, making sure we're getting out there and actually replacing meters in a timely manner. That's number one. They're also obviously looking very closely at the data to make sure that, you know, the numbers make sense, and they've made great strides on that front. Number two, when I came on board, we reorganized the department, so we actually have an assistant superintendent of operations who is, you know, a licensed water professional who is in charge of managing the operations, who is actively monitoring all of our water main breaks and making detailed calculations on our water loss, which when we have a water main break of a 6-inch, 12-inch main, in a matter of an hour, we can lose quite a bit of water. And I think we've missed that in the past. And then lastly, this year we hired a different company to do leak detection. We have a small company out of Holden. It's really an owner-operator that's been in the water industry for 20 years, who is making his way through the community, identifying leaks, and he has done a fantastic job finding not only service leaks, but he found a water main that had a crack in it on Sherwood Ave before it actually broke. So, you know, this year it'll be interesting when we get into the annual statistical report, which we typically do in February or March, to run those numbers, and I'm expecting our unaccounted for water to be less, because we're managing it at a much higher level.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on just this Article 4? Oh, go ahead, Rajiv.
So when we're transferring money into the flushing program, the flushing program have its own budget? Is that, would that mean that is over budget at this point? That's why? Because the money is getting transferred into the program, that program already has a budget of its own.
So, we do have a line item, but it's called Water Quality Improvement Project in Initiatives account. We expended that we appropriated, I believe it was the special town meeting of 2019, which was to be used for unidirectional flushing and also for pilot testing for hexavalent chromium and for PFAS. We've exhausted majority of that account through the 8 zones that we already completed with unidirectional flushing, and and encumbered it with the hexavalent chromium and PFAS piloting. So this is just putting money back into the account so that we can complete the rest of the zones.
Can I do a follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead.
So in other words, a larger budget was approved, but the funding wasn't there. This then completes the funding of an approved budget item.
That is correct. So initially, when we set up the account, we thought that we were actually going to do a very small portion of the town. And our concern at the time when we initiated, we thought we were only gonna do 4 zones, which would have been the reduced high, which is basically the center of town where we had received most of the complaints, and a portion of the high-pressure zone. We were actually able to complete more zones than what we had anticipated, mainly because we thought we were gonna have to do a lot of valve replacements and found we didn't need to do as many valve replacements to complete the flushing program as we originally had planned. So we actually, instead of doing 4 zones, we did 8 in the initial budget, and now we want to replace continue with the program. The plan then actually will be to, once we complete the town once, we will actually start doing the program and utilizing in-house staff.
Any other questions from the committee? I have a question for Kevin on, is it safe to say that these 3 warrant articles in years gone by that we'd basically be emptying now, that the funds for them came from the water quality improvement project, or the water enterprises fund?
Yes, water funds, yes.
The water funds.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Is there a way to avoid having to go through this process of emptying out these accounts at town meeting, rather to, say, draft future warrant articles, so that way, should these expire after a certain amount of time, it would revert back or some other such thing? I think Jeff has an answer for that, though.
Perfect question.
Thank you.
But that's a question that we've actually asked the accounting office probably a year or 2 ago, where we started actually having only maybe 4 or 5 general accounts, and we're calling them OG for ongoing, say, water main replacements. Because what used to happen was every year there'd be a separate account based on the town meeting of that particular year. So, which made it a little bit more complicated as we started going through there's a series of accounts where some of them we're still trying to figure out what they're for. There's some that, $364.19 or something like that. It's a small number, and was trying to figure out. So working with the accounting office, we're now slowly taking these out and transferring them back into, say, and you will see this again on the sewer side, on Article 5, but we're taking them out and say, put them into an OG water improvement, so which will be all the water main projects. We will put one out for, when we get to the sewer, will be for sewer projects, sewer pump station projects, and lining and putting them in single warrant article just for that purpose, without having to have separate ones for every single year.
But Jeff, the purpose of having those itemized warrant articles is so that way the public through town meeting can have a say on that project and on that financing. I'm talking about more like creating a way that the town meeting can approve it, but it can revert back once the project is expired.
So that's technically what we're doing. So we'll still have, at town meeting, we'll still appropriate, say, $1.3 million for water main improvements. We anticipate doing Maple Ave, Main Street, and Francis Ave, say. So that will be what will be appropriate at town meeting, but if we're $20,000 under budget, it will remain within that OG water main improvement account.
And we won't need to effectively deal with that.
That's correct. So then next year, we've
Appropriation,
already
yeah.
appropriated technically $20,000 toward that next project.
You can do what is needed to be done under the auspices of that fund.
That is correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, so our auditor allows us to clear up less than $5,000 it's appropriated by town meeting. Any more than that needs to come back for reconsideration
Sure.
by that body.
Sure.
That's really the appropriating authority.
I'm hoping that we can clean these up. Let's say that's. I think we're all on the same page with that. Just trying to come up with some new models here. Any other questions on this? You didn't think we were going to spend this much time on the Water Enterprise Fund, did you? Okay. I think we're good. Thank you very much. Let's move on to Article
Five.
number 5. Vikram, did you have something?
No.
No, you're just helping me out here,
Yeah, 5.
which I appreciate. But since it's still you, stay with me, Jeff.
Yeah. Article 5, very similar, cleaning up 2 old sewer accounts. One of them was for the replacement or for the installation of the sewer mains in Oakland Ave. That project came in under budget, and so we're transferring that money from the Oakland Ave Main Street account to pump station improvement account. Or actually, it's OG pump station improvement account. and cleaning up an old 2016 warrant article that was just labeled sewer pump stations, and again, putting that into the OG pump station improvement account.
Now, I remember when we were looking at sewering Oakland and Maine, it was very tricky because of the geography, because of the pumps, because we were working on the water station, because of all of this. And so you're saying project is all complete and everything's good now?
The project was completed several years ago, and we ended up coming in under budget because it was actually a section of the line that we didn't end up sewering. We didn't need to, just the way of the geography of the lots actually worked out.
Okay.
So we didn't need to sewer a portion. We did sewer every lot that we said we would. There was just, when we did the original design, we actually came up with a better solution during construction, so it worked out better.
And all the residents bought in?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, not everybody is connected to sewer. Most of them, as you know, a lot of those were on septic systems or cesspools.
Yeah.
We're finding that when they sell, or they have failed septics, that they are tying in. And so it's not everyone didn't tie in, but a good portion of them have.
But do they get assessed, even if they aren't tied in, because it's past their street and past their lot?
That is correct. So there was a betterment that was assessed on each of those parcels, which is on a 20-year assessment.
Mhm.
That is correct.
Anyone on the committee have a question on this?
Yes, Mark. The sewer pump station, the second item which you're requesting a transfer, since it's below $5,000, does it have to come through town meeting? Or could we avoid
It
that?
doesn't, we could have closed it out, but since we have this need in this account, we did bring it forward. But that is our, threshold that we can deal with administratively versus seeking reappropriation.
Okay.
Anyone else on our committee has,
And can I just
go
clear
ahead.
up one more thing?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. So whenever we clean it up, we can't put it into another warrant article that already has appropriated funds in. It just falls back into the general reserve that would then have to be reappropriated. So we can close it out. We can't rededicate it to something new.
I see.
The general reserve for the sewer?
Correct.
Sewer reserve,
Or water, yep, whatever the source was.
the source. So it in fact reverts back to its source,
Correct.
much like the water. Okay. Anyone else on the committee? Anyone from the public want to get in on this sewer talk? Okay. Jeff, you can go home. Thank you very much. No, you got more?
Yes.
Okay, well, I look forward to hearing from you again. Let's move along now to Article the 6th.
Article 6 is the appropriation of $2 million from the sale of Centec North to fund the repair and replacement of the Toblin Hill Bridge, Toblin Hill Drive, and Nursery Drive, and related features and structures. We have this unique opportunity through the sale of land to rededicate this for any other purpose for which we're able to borrow for greater than 5 years or 5 years or greater. Given the longstanding need within the neighborhood, we're proposing the use of these funds from this sale for these purposes. And this will not fund every dollar, but essentially all dollars that are remaining after all obligations, including the remaining debt service, was settled. We did sell that property for $6.5 million.
Judy?
I may not remember this correctly, but that Toblin Hill bridge, wasn't that, the issue with that bridge was because it was poorly constructed by the developer? And did we ever, as a town, get anything out of the developer?
No. We pursued it. The companies were either no longer in existence or beyond whatever limitations we were able to seek, but the former manager and select board did pursue it.
Okay. And I guess the question is, how do we keep from getting a liability like this in the future?
This was I think it's a good question. I think the town did all its due diligence. There was hidden design flaw. I'm sure Jeff can explain the structural issue much better than I could, but it was, the town does its due diligence before accepting the roadway, including reviewing as-built plans, but there's a unfounded structural deficiency that, this is a risk that we have, pretty rare.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Every year when we would do street acceptances, a certain member of town meeting would stand up and speak, and he would say that he'd gone down to that street, and he'd looked it over, and he'd looked at curbs, and he'd looked at water flow, and we all just sit there and, yeah, well, I wish he'd done it with this one, so.
You
This-
may
this-
have.
This is a lesson for you all, kids. Anyone else have anything on this article? How much did we get for this property, for the Allen Farm, Centec North?
6.5 million.
6.5 million.
How much did we pay for it?
6 million.
We paid 6 million?
It's a great investment.
Okay.
Not sure about that.
Okay. Let's move on then. Oh, wait, sorry. Members of the public. Okay, then I guess now we will move on to lucky number 7 article.
So Article 7 appropriates $18,325.20, which originate through a surcharge on transportation network company rides. And they have limited use. They can be appropriated for mobility initiatives. We're proposing to put them into a general account for sidewalks, crosswalks, and pedestrian mobility. We've used a limited amount of funds that we've received in prior years for improvements in this area. This is a result of the town receives 10 cents from the surcharge. So from the years 2019 and 2020, there were 183,252 Uber and Lyft-like rides that originated within the town of Shrewsbury.
Thank you. Questions from members of the Finance Committee? Kevin, why do we need to, what's the administrative side of this, why we would need to appropriate this? Why can't this get automatically into Schedule A? Is this because of state law or how we've designed it?
The general law that it falls under says it requires appropriation by the legislative body, which is town meeting.
So the idea would be, say, every year we would look at this number and say, yes, we want to use this money, and it has limited purposes, so we're going to use it for those limited purposes.
Yep.
And presumably, we would be, since this is a fairly new law and a fairly new process, but would we be doing this at annual meeting from now on, or is this always going to be something that we have to do ad hoc?
We normally receive that distribution around the end of summer, so it's probably likely a fall town meeting.
All right, anyone else? Yeah, Dennis, go ahead.
What's gonna be the process for which sidewalks this is spent on? Is it we're gonna prioritize busy streets that don't have sidewalks? Like I can think of 4 or 5 streets that could really use a sidewalk, or we're gonna prioritize fixing sidewalks on roads that have sidewalks on both sides of the street, where one side is good, one side is bad? I mean, what's the priority here?
So, as I know, Dennis, like this $18,000 combined with, I believe, about $10,000 that we have in a I'm sorry? 16. From a previous year is, would barely get us one crosswalk installation if you do handicap ramps. So we're planning to use these more for planning purposes to identify needs and then fund the capital improvements through other sources.
No, great, yeah,
Yep.
I assume
Yep.
that money wasn't gonna do more than 100 feet of sidewalk
Right.
at best, but
Yep.
just wondering how we're prioritizing going forward, because I look around and I see lots of streets without sidewalks and lots of streets with sidewalks on both sides of the street. And,
Agreed. Yep.
I'd like to see that, resolved.
Thank you. Any other questions from other folks on the committee? Anyone in the public care to chime in on Uber Lyft funding? All right, then we're moving along to article number 8. Mrs. Snell is approaching. Mrs. Snell is approaching.
Hello.
I was stalling just so you
Thank
could get there.
So Angela Snell, I'm the Superintendent of Public Facilities and Parks, and Article 8 is to fund the costs associated with the schematic design for the replacement of the windows at Oak Middle School. The current windows are approximately 40 years old and are mechanically deficient and energy inefficient. The town is gonna partner with the Massachusetts School Building Authority, MSBA, to fund these improvements through their accelerated repair program. It's estimated that the MSBA will contribute 52% of the total cost of the project. The preliminary estimate for the total cost of this project is $975,000. Any questions?
Oak windows. MSBA, you said it was estimated. How do we know? When will there be certainty on the MSBA contribution to that?
So we're gonna find out at the end of October, hopefully.
Ah,
Yes,
okay.
soon,
Shortly.
yes.
Do they need our commitment? Is that how this process is working? We commit and then they'll say, yeah? Is that
It's just part of the process. That doesn't really hold up the decision.
Okay. Carlos, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just, I was just curious if you had a cost savings estimate for the installation of the energy efficient windows, how much we might save over,
For the energy, I don't have that.
do not, thank you.
Any other questions from committee?
Mark, yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think this is wonderful. We definitely have to get this done, given that they're 40 years old. I was just wondering, what is the, going forward, what's the life expectancy of the windows that you will install? Do you have any info on that? That would be great.
It would probably be a similar
30,
timeframe.
40 years?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, members of the public, Mr. Molina, go ahead. Jason, do you have kids at Oak?
Yes. Jason Molina, 31 Winchester Avenue. Just out of curiosity, will we be taking advantage of any green community funding or grants? Thank you.
Not for this project. We are using green communities for other projects.
So, just so everyone's aware, if I could just add, we only we're limited to the amount of funding that we do receive, are eligible for every year through the competitive grant process. So, like, as Angela said, we'll use every dollar that's available to us. It won't be dedicated to this project, though.
Any other questions from the committee or from the public? Yeah, go ahead, Alan.
So, is this going to be like an ongoing thing as far as, you're talking about old windows needing to be replaced? So are you going to be coming back? We got, 10 more windows to do, or 5 more windows to do kind of thing? Can we
Well-
expect that, or what?
Hopefully, if we get funding for this, we're planning to do all of the windows at Oak,
Okay,
but we will be probably coming back for some additional funding because we have to match it.
okay.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee members or the public on Article the 8th? You done, Angela?
Done.
Oh, wait, oh, you're so close! Dennis?
How much do we budget in the building budgets for things like replacement windows and those types of things? Or is this more of, it goes until it goes, and then we come back and ask for a lot of money? I would think there'd be some maintenance funds that would be used towards, maintaining parts of the building. Maybe windows after 40 years is a little, out of that scope, but.
Yeah, these windows, we haven't been able to find the parts to them, so they're beyond, replacement parts right now. Most of our projects of this, come in our capital budget. So, but we do have maintenance money. Our major building repair fund, $432,000 is for smaller repairs, so.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it for Article the 8th. Let's move on to Article the 9th. We're halfway through. Anyone need to take a recess while we're halfway through? Intermission time? We good? Okay, so let's move on then to Article 9. This looks like we were just, it looks like we're clearing up just a technical problem on a permission. issue here, but if you want.
Yep, so Article 9 is the acceptance of Clause 22G of Chapter 59 of Section 5. This is an identified area where the town has not accepted this clause, allowing for further tax exemptions through the assessor's office. So as the Finance Committee is aware, the Board of Selectmen committed to exploring any opportunity to find tax relief to taxpayers during and through their override commitments. And our new assessor, Ruth Anderson, has identified that the town has never accepted this section, and it would provide further exemption to veterans whose property has been placed into a trust or conservatorship. That was a loophole when the original sections of exemptions were put into place, and this would clear that up and provide such options to those living in Shrewsbury with those, meeting those criteria.
Mhm. Thank you. Questions from members of the committee? Dennis?
I mean, the trust and conservatorship, are they putting that into that so that that land or whatever can be used later on to relatives or something? Is it a way to, you know, give them more opportunity to get public funds? I just don't understand what exactly we're doing here. It may be a great thing, it may not be a great thing, but we are giving out tax exemptions. And as a taxpayer, I want to make sure we're giving them for the right reasons. So I'm just wondering how these trusts are set up, what they're set up for in conservatorships.
Sure. So, I don't know, Ruth Anderson, our principal assessor, is able to provide a better answer than I would.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Nice to have you here.
Thank you very much. Nice to see everyone. So essentially, the other exemptions that we offer by statute, so statute means it's in the law, we have to do it. The other clauses do have this provision, so if somebody places their property in a trust for estate planning purposes, they can still apply for and qualify for the tax exemption. They're not precluded from getting it because they've put their property in trust to avoid probate when they pass away or whatever the reasons are to do that. For whatever reason, the legislature never put those provisions in for the veterans. And this is just gonna clear that up, make it all equitable so that the veterans can apply and qualify the same way as any other elderly or
Okay, so
blind.
it's basically that they left one group out.
Yeah, they left one group out and for whatever reason, so we just need to clean that up.
Okay. That answers my question.
If I understand it right, it's not that the group was left out, but rather the group was included, but this method of their property being held
Exactly.
was left
There's
out.
an ownership standard that needs to be
Right.
met to qualify for this, and with the other exemptions, you can have your property in a trust and still qualify, but that was not true for the veterans.
And this is not a trivial distinction. A lot of people will do this, will have their land in either a
Absolutely.
trustee or to a lesser extent, I assume, conservatorships. This is not just a small amount, you know, it's great that this has been found, thank you. And I'm glad that the selectmen have encouraged this. Do you have a sense of how much money would be saved, would be shifted? And is this a town burden, or does this get reimbursed from the state, or how does that work?
So, the exemptions are funded through the overlay account, which is funded, it's a line item on the recap. Because I'm new, I have no idea if anyone has applied for the veterans exemption and been turned away because their property's in a trust. Just my gut says it's not gonna be a huge amount of people, but, honestly, the optics of it is important so that everybody is treated equitably and fairly and able to qualify for things that, would help them out.
All right, well, thank you. I hope people who are watching this tonight, the dozens of people who watch us, some of them will hear about this or tell folks about this opportunity. Anything else? Anyone else have any questions from the committee? Or from the watching public in our room? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Article 9. And now to continue with the Howland Rowley Show, Article 9.
10. Who's good now?
10.
And yeah,
Y'all, you just tell me, guys. Don't, don't.
We did?
Don't worry about it. Glad to hear it. My first time doing this.
So Articles 10 and 11 are similar or related. Article 10 creates a system special purpose stabilization fund within the sewer department. In the rate study that was conducted 2 years ago, and also based on the Board of Selectmen's policy of having utilities maintain a 5% stabilization fund, we are now creating that fund within the sewer enterprise, or sewer special purpose fund, special revenue fund.
Questions from the committee members on this? So here we are now, we're creating a new fund that's gonna be dedicated to this, but this is gonna act as a stabilization fund specifically.
That is correct.
And to move funds from money from this fund to the general purpose, it's gonna require legislative action.
That is correct.
Okay, but it doesn't require the difficult legislative action that we would normally have, like the 9/10 votes and such. This would just be a standard vote, right?
It requires a supermajority, 2/3,
2/3, okay.
to remove funds.
And the funding for this would come from 5% of revenue, or how's that gonna work?
So we'll put money in every year, but at Article 11 actually moves money from two different accounts. Currently, we have a general sewer construction account, and also transferring from the sewer surplus fund to give us 1.1 million in that stabilization fund as to start.
And in future, in our annual going forward, when we're funding the sewer accounts, we will be appropriating funds specifically for this, so we wouldn't need a specific article. It would rather be part of the general sewer funding article.
That is correct.
Great. Any other questions from members of our committee? And the public here in the room want to get in on this? Good stuff, folks. Come on. Okay. You did just do Article 11, so
In theory, yes, I did.
we'll just go straight to anyone want to talk about either of these articles? Say it now. Say it proud. Be here. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're all done. Moving on to Article 12. Zoning. Introduce yourself, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I'm familiar with some of you, and some of you, this is my first time meeting you. I'm Bernie Cahill. I am the town planner. With me tonight, behind me is Rome McAllister. She's our newest addition to the planning department. She's an assistant planner, and she helped draft some of these articles that you're going to hear about tonight. So I don't know how many of you have seen any of the other presentations. I'm going to try to keep it brief. I'll pause after each one and let you have some questions, and we'll just keep moving on. So Article number 12 is a zoning map change. This is related to the new Beal School on Lake Street. So when the Beal School was constructed, the Lake Street right-of-way had to shift slightly to the left. As you look at the map, it's actually towards the west. And as some of you may or may not know, some of our zoning boundaries are based on the center of the right-of-way. So when the right-of-way shifted slightly, as you can see up there, it also shifted the boundary, and we needed to adjust for that. So that's all it is. You can fit about, I think I said the other night, I want to stay consistent, 3 or 4 cars in this little spot that's changing, and it's on the road. It's not even in a person's property. So it's just it's a corrective action to adjust for the new road layout.
Bernie, I appreciate cleaning stuff up, and since you came here, you've been doing a lot of great cleaning, okay? And I'm always thrilled, I'm always excited, this is good stuff. My big question is, what happens if we didn't pass this? What could possibly, who cares about zoning on a road? What are the implications of this, other than the fact that it's cleaning up the map?
Yeah, we actually have quite a few small slivers like this throughout town that aren't cleaned up. I think it is important because as we go forward, we might change it again. And if it gets changed again, we want to know precisely where it is as we move it. It also helps with GIS coordination when they're drawing out the maps for GIS to know exactly where it is. And it's just good practice.
Okay, so it's a good practice, good map keeping, GIS. It's not because no one can build a farm stand on the road. You can't put a house on the road. It doesn't really matter for the practical purposes. It's more for administrative sake. and
Correct.
keeping that line straight.
That's right.
Great. Any other questions from either the committee or the public on this article? Okay. What's next? Article 13.
Great. Article 13. So I think as many of you are familiar with, and those watching at home, during COVID, outdoor dining has become incredibly popular at restaurants. And what we are proposing here, and what are the intent behind this article is to lower barriers for restaurants that want to have outdoor service as well. So to do this, we did a couple of things. The first thing is we tightened up the existing definitions between restaurants with outdoor service and without. The other thing we did is we took outdoor service and we increased where it's allowed to two new districts, the limited business district and the limited commercial business district. We also, so that actually matches what indoor service is already. So they actually now match, which, you know, if you think about it, makes quite a bit of sense. The other thing we did, which we hadn't done before, is to take this away from the Zoning Board of Appeals because we found that was a barrier to businesses. Having to get a special permit from the ZBA to put some chairs and some seats outside. So we're proposing to make it by right, but with an internal staff review that would go through my office, building department, fire department, engineering, whatever. Everyone would take a look who's involved and sign off on a form, and that would go to the Board of Selectmen finally for their sign off once the staff has given its okay.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from?
I would just say, I think that's great that we're moving it to make it easier like that. That's a huge,
Yeah.
We need the flexibility.
Mm.
That's what it gives us. I like that. Anyone else want to chime in? Have their say? Public? Got anything on this? I want to know, when you said, because I don't understand the procedure very well, after your department signs off on it, it goes to the selectmen? So is this because they handle
They're the-
licenses?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
They're the licensing authority, so it would act somewhat similar to some of the other licenses. I kind of compare it to the liquor license, but it's not quite that. But the idea is that the selectmen wouldn't be necessarily doing the review. They'd get all of our reviews, and then they'll be signing off their final okay.
Neat. Okay, thank you.
Mark, if I,
Yeah, Vikram.
thank you, Mr. Kale, that's, I think it's definitely a needed change in our bylaws, but as far as the approval process after that you mentioned that other boards have to sign off, and including the fire department, does any other bylaw have to change as a result of this change, or is
No.
that already in the system?
Right, so we've actually already drafted an internal document for review that's just waiting on the approval of this article to go forward. So we've run that by the selectmen, we've run that by the staff who are going to take part in this, and gotten everyone's okays and edits and so on. But we don't have to do any other changes.
I see, thank you.
I like that. Thank you. Other questions from our committee or from the public at large? The 4 public members at large here. Okay, then let's move on to, where are we? 14. 14.
All right, so this is the big one for special town meeting, the longest one. I believe the committee's been, received a revised motion for this evening. So I will go over that revision. It actually comes towards the end of the document. I thought, let's just go through it, and I'll explain it when we get there. So we've been working on this for a little while. The planning department, we've had it in the back of our minds to update the wireless telecommunications regulations in town to match current FCC regulations. That's the Federal Communications Commission. That oversees all this at the federal level. So we found that we were falling behind in terms of definitions, and that's where I'll start. So we did five specific things to bring us up to date, if you will, with what the FCC is doing. The first, as you can see, is changing the existing definition for wireless telecommunications towers. I'm not going to walk through all of it. It's very technical, but we're trying to match the technical terms that are now being used at the FCC level. The other thing we're doing is introducing a small wireless facility definition and basing that on what how the federal government defines it, simply because the federal government's constantly tweaking these definitions, and I don't think this committee or the town meeting wants to do a 2/3 zoning article every time they change a small word in their definition. So we're referencing the federal government's own definition for small wireless. The second thing we're proposing is to, well, first we're going to put the small wireless, that new definition in use, in the zoning table. But more importantly than that, what we're doing is proposing that the planning board take over from the zoning board of appeals to provide special permits for these uses. We feel this is appropriate because most of the time when these different companies come forward with an antenna or a tower, they provide site plans, and it's really a site plan review that's going on, which is not really ZBA's, Zoning Board of Appeals, purview. That's not really what they do month to month. They're dealing more with small special permit uses or variances or what have you. So that is our second proposal. Third is we're proposing section V to be a new subsection in the zoning bylaw. What this will do is, again, reestablish the planning board as the special permit granting authority and provide, standards and criteria for the special permit as it moves through for the board to look at. Within this is the fourth change, which is the introduction of what's called an eligible facilities request, because the federal government likes to make things sound interesting. All it really means is that currently if somebody changes out an antenna, say a like-for-like antenna on one of our big cell towers, they need a special permit right now from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So this changed in the last 12 years, and essentially what the federal government is saying is that if someone's doing a like-for-like replacement of an antenna, a town or municipality has to obviously it will be reviewed at the building permit level, but not by a board. It's considered a minor change, and it doesn't need board approval. And then finally, at the very end, is small wireless facilities again. And that's broken down into two sections. One is small wireless facilities that are proposed to be in the public right-of-way. What we're proposing here is, I think as most of you know, Selco controls the utilities in the public right-of-way right now. So what we did is we actually had a few meetings with Selco, Chris Roy and Ralph Iaccarino, and we worked out that we feel it would make a much more sense for Selco to be in charge of small wireless in the public right-of-way. So they would oversee the aesthetics requirements and the technical requirements of those installations. On private property outside the public right-of-way, it would still be, as with the towers, the purview of the planning board under a special permit. And to go back to the revision, it was actually under section B. Mr. Modapalo of the Selectmen the other day asked a great question. We had originally had something in there saying, some language in here that said every 5 years the applicant needs to return to the board. So we had, Mo asked if that was possible. So, and if it was actually within the bounds of the law. We brought it to town council to re-review with us, and under town council's guidance, we've decided to recommend its removal. And that's all 5 points plus the revision.
Okay, questions from my fellow committee members? I know this is dense, but there's a lot of stuff in here to look at and consider.
Mark, I had
Yeah,
one.
Vikram, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Kale, for that detailed explanation of these changes. After reviewing it, I was just wondering, what about health concerns related to any new technology that might be inserted in these cell towers? Would that be under the purview of the planning board to determine any health dangers to the common public?
So it wouldn't. It's something I looked into myself as we were reviewing these changes. The FCC actually specifically calls out health requirements, and essentially what they say is if one of these companies is coming to your town and has one of our FCC licenses, we, the municipalities, must assume that they've been approved for all the different health standards that the FCC has, that we are essentially not allowed to step on that terrain. That's their purview.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Vikram. Another question? Hannah?
On the the ending language in letter B on the small wireless facilities, when
Mhm.
it says that proponents shall be aware that proposed installation of small wireless facilities in the public right-of-way may be subject to regulations by Selco. On the maybe piece, is that, is it just may because not all of them would be, or like,
That's as much as, you're saying number 1A, the end of that?
yeah, B1A, yeah?
That's as much to provide Selco wiggle room as anything. There are gonna be circumstances where Selco may not require, I mean, if it's a small enough installation, or if it's a fix or repair, they're not gonna require them necessarily to go through every hoop to do that. So we worked this out with Chris Roy, that we wanted to give Selco the most leeway that we could. We have a lot of respect for Selco, and we think they do a great job, and over their own utilities, they're gonna have a lot of control.
But I guess through this, is it that they have to go to Selco to find out if they are subject to something, or is it triggered through the planning board exercise? Like,
No, so they would, when they go to pull any sort of permit, and we're gonna set this up, so the building department and is gonna know, we're gonna have a way to communicate between each other, so that if they come to the building department and we find out they need to go to Selco, we'll do a review, right? Because most of the time it starts with a building permit, comes in for a permit, and then at that point, Ms. Sheehan, the building inspector, would say, you need to go to Selco, this is a Selco matter. And then they would start the process. They'll have an application sheet, and they'll have the requirements on that application sheet.
okay, I guess just again, the determination of if they need to go to Selco is because there's something written that says they trigger needing to go. It's not a
If they're on the public right of way.
subjective opinion of the building inspector. It is something written that says this is what they want to do, and that triggers Selco.
Yeah, it's really the location. If it's in the public right of way, then that automatically triggers Selco. So it's more a location thing. So immediately we know if they're gonna put it along Maple Ave, we're gonna say, well, that's in the right of way, and you're gonna go to Selco. If they decide to, as they say Verizon or mobile, T-Mobile or something, wanna put an antenna on a private church, then we would say, you're not going to Selco, you're going to the planning board for a special permit.
Okay.
So it's location-based.
Any other committee members have a question on this? I want to ask about the, one thing you have in 51A1A. In accordance with 47 USC 1455-1, it's on, you don't have page numbers on this, so, oh, wait, there it is. It's page 3 of the revised motion that we were just sent. Are you on that?
I think so. Can you say the number again?
It's
Section,
Section V, 5, wireless communications, et cetera. A, wireless telecommunications, 1A, in accordance with.
yes.
Okay, so I think, I don't know, I'm just trying to find the statute, the federal statute on there, and it would be 1455, is it A1? Or is it B1? Because it would be, the subsection would be a letter, not a number, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm on the right. Maybe you don't have.
Pretty sure it was subsection 1. This was reviewed by town council, so,
Okay.
I know he reviewed the federal reference that you're talking about.
Okay, well,
And we thought, I mean,
it wouldn't cause a problem. It's just, I'm just trying to find
Right.
what you were referencing, because earlier on, when you were referencing the CFR, I like the idea of being flexible and not, and because if it's really based on the federal government, we don't want to have to change our language. That I understand, especially the hassle of changing our zoning languages. It's cumbersome. But can you tell us how it is currently defined in the CFR? Or at least give us just a ballpark, back of the envelope description, because otherwise I don't know what it is we'd be saying it would be defined as.
let's see.
And you, if
did
it's like
have-
every other federal regulation, I ask you, please don't read the whole thing. I don't have all week.
Yeah,
But
so I do have it here. So small wireless facilities are facilities that meet the following conditions. I'm gonna give you 3 of them.
Okay.
Are mounted on structures 50 feet or less in height, including their antennas. Are mounted on structures no more than 10% taller than other adjacent structures. and do not extend existing structures on which they are located to a height of more than 50 feet or by more than 10 feet. And then it talks about the cubic volume of each of them, so it's 3 cubic feet in volume, no more than that, and gets into some more kind of those standards.
So it's something, it's defined, basically, take a wireless facility and go by height, and it's a small height. And that's the thing that might get tweaked from time to time, what small means,
Correct.
but not what wireless means or facility. It's
Yes.
basically, it's a subsection of wireless facilities.
Correct. I mean,
Okay.
if they change it from 3 cubic feet to 3.5 or 2.5,
Not our problem at that point.
don't really want to go back to town meeting if we don't have to for that.
Right, that's a good point. I also have a question on a different thing. You sent a letter, 4 letters, to the town clerk saying that the planning board held public hearings regarding articles, these 4 articles that you're here for tonight, that they approved them and so forth. You said at the bottom, CC Finance Committee and Board of Selectmen, but I didn't get it, we didn't get it until now, when I got my town meeting packet.
I apologize for that.
If it's just a
It was
slip-up.
probably a miscommunication between myself and the town manager's office.
Okay.
Who was doing what, so I will make sure it gets to you for the annual town meeting.
It's okay. I just want, since I'm new to this job, I just want to make sure there wasn't something I was supposed to get and distribute or something else that happened. And it did come with a town meeting packet anyhow. So that was just something I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a snafu on my side. So that's fine. Any other questions from the committee, Mr. Cahill, on this article about telecommunications? Wireless cell phone. Anyone from the public want to chime in on this? All right. Is that it for your presentations tonight?
Number
Mr. Cahill?
15. So Article 15.
15, yes.
I promise I'll hit it real
Yep.
quick, then you guys can move on.
Good one.
So this one is as I think everyone remembers, a new town center district was created last year at annual town meeting, 2020 in August. What we've done here is we're proposing to put it in the inclusionary housing subsection of the zoning bylaw for developments in the town center district. This is for every district in town, is subject to the inclusionary housing bylaw. This, we wanted to obviously make sure town center district was as well, and we're proposing it at a 12.5% of projects that have units 5 or more, or subdivisions with 5 or more lots. Now, I'm not anticipating subdivisions in the town center based on what's there currently. However, I can see certainly medium to small sized apartments hitting this, and we want to make sure that we're continuing to move ahead with our subsidized housing inventory under 40B. So by putting it 12.5%, it matches the zoning districts around it, also have 12.5%, and we think it's just high enough it won't cause anyone any heartburn who's looking to move in. And again, speaking of barriers, we want to make sure it's fair but not overly burdensome on someone who's trying to invest in our town center.
Well-intentioned, could be good. Any questions from my fellow committee members? All right, members of the public want to get in on this? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Cahill.
Thank all of you.
Pleasure doing business with you.
You as well.
See you at town meeting. All right, let's move on to our final article. Article the 16th, which I don't have in my packet, but I do have it on my computer. Article number 16.
So
Who's going to present that, Kevin?
Article 16 proposes to use $250,000 in free cash to acquire a parcel of land along Lake Street for purposes of making roadway improvements. Anyone that's familiar with Lake Street just north of Grove Meadow Lane will know there's a very sharp and inappropriately situated corner. If you're heading south, it's off camber, meaning the corner tends to force you off the roadway geometrically. It's just very sharp and it's not to design standards. There became an opportunity earlier this year as Mr. Sears, who owns said parcel that we're looking to acquire, put up much of his land for sale, including his house lot, and did an A&R to divide up the rest of his property. So this is an opportunistic approach for the board to make roadway improvements to improve the safety for residents in the area and those who traverse Lake Street by acquiring this land and then making improvements in the future.
Anyone on the committee want to ask any questions or make any comments on this article, the 16th? Dennis, go ahead.
I think it's what, over an acre of land you'll be purchasing? Is that whole acre gonna be used, or is there gonna be, are we gonna be able to resell that land back at some point?
I'm not exactly sure, as we don't have the full roadway laid out at this point. If you can see up on the screen, the area to the right, which is properly oriented, which would be the eastern portion of the lot, has a wetland that runs through it. So I think that we will significantly reduce the buildable area, that you may not be able to put a structure there because of the curvature and the geometry of the new roadway. So I don't think it'll be able to resell it, but that's not a final answer. That'd be my guess at this point.
Follow up?
Go ahead.
And if we buy this land to do the road repair, what are we losing from the tax revenues?
At this point, it would be the assessed value of just that vacant lot. So it hasn't been divided out because the property just sold, so I wouldn't be able to give you a specific number, but if it's somewhere in the neighborhood of being assessed at $200,000, a couple $1,000.
Okay.
Thank you. Other questions? Judy?
I did see the email that Kristen shared with a resident. I was a little bit curious, though. One of the questions was asked, I believe it's $250,000 for just a little over an acre, and it said that price was, you came to that price based on comps. I'm a little shocked that an acre of land is $250,000.
You shouldn't be.
I am.
Yeah, I mean, it is. That is what a developable piece of an acre and a third in Shrewsbury is selling for. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's 3 lots.
Well, yeah, I guess you're right, it is 3 lots, okay.
Any other questions from members of the Finance Committee? Yeah, go ahead.
Did we think about doing something like eminent domain, just to take the piece that we needed? And not have to, because I know there's another $500,000 or more of road
Yep.
work, so
Yep.
this 250 just gets us into the game, and then we get to pay to play.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that, I'm not trying to make your comments sound negative. I just don't think that's an appropriate approach initially. Always try to provide, we would have to provide fair value anyhow.
But you wouldn't be taking the whole acre.
But I think if a court determined our taking rendered the entire lot undevelopable, we could be on the hook for the value of the whole lot. So I think this is always the best first approach, but I certainly do appreciate the context of the question. It could save us a little bit of money, but I do think this is the right approach with the landowner.
Thank you. Any other members? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
And the other thing is, I did see the email that went back and forth. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of, is there a lot of accidents on that road? I mean, it's a tough corner, but if you have the right signage and people understand it, I can tell you tough corners throughout all of town, we're not fixing all of those. So my question is, why that one? Why now? Why spend roughly $1 million, $750,000 to do it?
Well, it is the opportunity that presented us with knowing that the property will be on the market, seeing the geometry and being very familiar with it from the board standpoint and staff standpoint. It's kind of a no-brainer in the engineering department. You're right, there's plenty of these corners in other aspects of the community. There's 10 accidents in the last 6 years, 3 this year. So it's really an opportunity to make an improvement. In some instances, we don't have that opportunity, so.
Judy?
That, kind of following up on Dennis's point, I mean, I guess part of me says that, you're right, it's an opportunity to do that, maybe that's just the right thing to do, but on the other hand, it's sort of setting a precedence. We can't buy, every piece of property and fix every piece of roadway. I mean, maybe a more conservative approach of signage. Sometimes if you straighten a road, you actually increase the speed on the road, which could lead to additional issues. So I'm a little bit concerned about the precedence and the expectation that the town's just gonna buy property and fix the roads, and also unintended consequences. And then obviously, you know, as they say, this is just the nose of the camel. You know, we've got the rest of the camel to actually try and reach the goal in which we are attempting to achieve.
Any other, Kevin, is there a response? Okay. Any, my only question on this article at this point is we're only taking this action for the sake of making roadway improvements. We're not interested in this property per se, other than access to it and perhaps changes to it. So would we, post-project, seek to convert the land back to a private ownership and put it back on the rolls?
Again, I think we have to see how the final roadway lays out with regards to the ability to develop the rest of the site.
Understandably.
Yep.
Okay. Is there anyone else on the committee who wants to speak on this? Is there anyone from the public here who wants to get in on luscious Article 16? You, stranger in the back, wearing the plaid shirt and probably no socks.
Thank you. Definitely no socks.
Definitely.
Morris DiPaolo, 18 Willard Ave. I'm also speaking tonight as a member of the board, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the board. The
Board of Selectmen.
The Board of Selectmen, we did vote 4-1 to recommend this. And generally, obviously, if they voted to recommend it, they're in favor, but I just wanted to discuss why now. And it was an opportunity. And it's no different. It's an opportunity to fix a need that many of us in town have known has existed for a long time. There was no opportunity because the land wasn't for sale to repair it. This really is no different than when we bought, and you could make the argument one was for water and such, but we just took opportunity of buying 2 pieces of land on North Quincy last year because they came available. If they didn't, we wouldn't have gone and seek them out. Because you're right, we could go all over town doing that. But where this roadway and that curve is, it's kind of weird. And we have the opportunity, either now or in the future, to use that piece of land to straighten it out. I felt, in particular, that we should take the opportunity to buy it now. Because if we decide in 2 years that we want to do it and there's a house there, it's gone. There's no opportunity. And a lot of there are a lot of other sharp corners in town. There's no question about it. They also have houses on both sides of them. And we don't have the opportunity to fix those intersections, those curves. So why this and not others? That's part of the reason. Really, the whole intent is to buy this, to preserve it, to do the improvement in the future if we think it's needed. We don't need, if we buy this land, to come back in the spring and necessarily appropriate the money to do this job. We do, however, have Beal School that opened. There is increased traffic because of that. It hasn't all been quantified yet because it's too early. I can tell you from my discussions with the school department, the transportation person in the school department who queried AA Transportation on how many buses they thought were using that road based on their routes, and not only for the routes of going up Lake Street, but using that as a shortcut to go somewhere else. There's 45 buses a day that are estimated to be on that road. And they're not spread out. They're during, a rush hour period. So There is a potential issue there. Yes, there's been no accidents, but do we really want to wait for one? The other thing is, Market Basket and the apartments are going to be coming online within a year. I think common sense would say that people up north of Lake Street in that vicinity are most likely going to go down that road because it's easier to get to Market Basket from that way than it is in any of the other routes. Unfortunately, Market Basket and the Beal School project were not required to study that part of the road. Actually, Market Basket wasn't required to study Lake Street or South and Sig. So part of this is really let's be prepared. I think it's forward thinking. We could discuss whether or not there were other priorities in town. I think we're always going to have a list about a mile long of priorities. But it's important to note that this particular proposal did not bump another proposal. There was nothing on the table that this took the place of. So we're not doing anything there to impede any of that. The other thing is, if we decide that we don't need the land in 2 years, that the traffic didn't materialize for some reason, I think it's doubtful, but it's possible. There's nothing to stop us from selling the land or to, I don't know technically how we do it, but the Affordable Housing Trust could probably use that to build an affordable house. It's going to get more than one because of the zoning, but there are uses for that land. It's not a waste. Or we could put it into conservation land. The other thing I would say is this whole discussion of Lake Street is not new. I know at least 20 years ago we discussed it, and for a whole bunch of reasons we decided not to do it. Part of it was the design standards at the time that we would have to use to get TIP money, the transportation program money, like West Main Street. That might have been a little bit too onerous. But the other thing I'd like to say is, if you've been on Lake Street, and I'm sure almost everybody has, when we just built the school, we just made improvements on 2,600 feet, plus or minus a couple, up on the north end of Lake Street because of the school. And that was because of similar circumstances up near where the entrance is with geometry, sight lines, et cetera. And back when the subdivisions that include Faulkner and Hemingway were built, the developers at that time were required to improve the road through the planning board, the subdivision process, to improve about 1,700 feet of that road just north of where we're talking about. So it's not like we haven't incrementally taken advantage of situations where we could improve the road. So without trying to duplicate anything that Kevin said, I think that would be it. But I think it'd be wise and forward-thinking to do this. And anybody in town knows with this market, and particularly with house lots, if this gentleman put these house lots up for sale, they would be gone literally in a day. He would have an offer. So we can't get it back if somebody buys it and builds a house. So hopefully town meeting will see fit to purchase it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? You in the back, come join us. Come to the mic. Tell us who you are and tell us what you got to say. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Suzanne Moriando. I live at 362 Lake Street. First, I want to thank Kristen Lass and her team for their work in finding answers to my questions over the last 2 days. I appreciate it. Finance Committee, Article 16 has good intentions from good people, but it is unnecessary and it represents a blank check for our future. Some history. 20 years ago, there was another road reconstruction opportunity on Lake Street. The town sought approval to widen it. Why Lake Street? I took days and weeks and months of a summer to find out. There were no complaints and few accidents. We learned that because Lake Street connected two state roads, we could apply for a state grant for reconstruction. Fortunately, one selectman said at that meeting that the project would benefit no one. They could not justify the need, so they couldn't justify the cost. I saw that proposal as an opportunity looking for a problem. We have learned Article 16 was added to the warrant as an idea to buy a house lot so that if traffic increases as a result of the opening of Beale School and the Market Basket development, in the future, we can fix the curve in the road. Also, we may have to buy land from abutters. It was also mentioned that if we find there is not a traffic problem, well, we can just sell the land. But that is not how this motion is written. The description designates the purchase for roadway purposes to improve a sharp off-camber curve at number 439. The motion says to acquire and make improvements. The whole point of the article is about safety. It does not say that if we were wrong about traffic, we can sell the land. People in town think the plan is to rebuild a road. There was no data gathered to provide any context of the safety problem at this curve. The chief of police didn't mention Lake Street in the top 4 streets of concern in his excellent report last month. We are told the town is being proactive to prevent future incidents given the new Beale School and other development coming from, Well, due to redistricting of the new Beale School, the majority of students are coming from north of Route 9. There are now fewer buses on Lake Street, contrary to what has been said. Our lived experience, asking my neighbors, is that the traffic has reduced. Thank you to the folks at the bus scheduling office. They did a fantastic job. There are no projections regarding the Market Basket development, and without a study, no one knows what traffic increase to anticipate on Lake Street or any of the 6 other arteries leading to Route 20. If you can't quantify a problem, do you really have a problem? And what is your metric for success? This proposal feels to me like another solution looking for a problem. So now we realize that even though there exists a very sharp off-camber curve, current safety issues at that curve are not a priority. To be sure, we know that softening the curve will only embolden drivers to go faster. If we really wanted to improve safety, we could employ any number of traffic calming methods, as Chief Anderson described. Line striping to narrow the lane, he explained, has the psychological effect of drivers reducing their speed. In fact, the curve at number 439 is by itself a traffic calming measure. It forces drivers to slow down. We don't need to rebuild it. An example of a very effective traffic calming measure implemented by the town is on Howe Avenue at the south end. This is right around the corner from my house. There's a very 90-degree sharp left turn where 3 serious accidents occurred in very recent years. One car landed in my neighbor's lawn less than 10 feet from her living room. Another hit the utility pole and snapped it in half. A third car left the road, broke through her pool fence, and landed in her swimming pool. The car survived. The swimming pool was a total loss. These are pretty dramatic accidents. To address this hazard, the town installed 4 signs. One shows a sharp left arrow, and the other 3 are a series of arrows directing the continuance of the road to the left. Problem solved. It is proof that traffic calming works. Finally, this moment has been characterized as a rare opportunity to acquire this land for road improvements. If this were a real priority, we could have approached the property owners years ago to see if they would sell. Clearly, they're willing to sell to us now. We know the land costs $250,000. Hours ago, we got an estimate of $500,000 for construction. That's in 2021 dollars. What will it be in 2022 or 2023 dollars? Plus, we may need to buy land from abutters. If a fair price couldn't be agreed upon, would we have to take someone's land by eminent domain. No one wants to do that. And if you approve this article, it sets quite an interesting precedent for other folks who want to use free cash for their public safety project. This proposal is a blank check into the future. So, what if we reject this proposal and do nothing? If we do nothing, drivers will have to slow down and pay attention, just as you have done, just as I have done, and just as all other drivers in Shrewsbury have done. Roads don't cause accidents. Drivers cause accidents due to excessive speed and distracted driving. If there's an accident at this curve, it will be no one's fault but the driver's. I ask you to reject Article 16. You can't justify the need, so you can't justify the cost. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else want to respond from that? From Kevin or Kristen want to respond? Okay. Anyone else in the public want to speak? Mr. DiPaolo.
Just a couple of things. First of all, roads don't cause accidents, but they can contribute to accidents, and I am a living example of that. I was on a road that was off camber like this on a snowy day. Ice and water had gone across the bottom of the road, snowed, it was slippery. When I went around the corner, even driving relatively slowly, I braked, I couldn't stop, I went across the street. I was assessed a surcharge because I crossed the yellow line. I appealed it, and the police chief said, actually wrote a letter for me and said, the design of this road contributed to this accident. So, yes, a road doesn't cause it, but they can contribute to it. The other thing is, perhaps I was a little too generous on the idea about when we could do the road. If I had my druthers, and I don't think it's absolutely necessary that we start the road next month, I would do it sooner than later. I've lived in this town all my life. I've driven that road a long time, and I've always seen it as a potential problem. Now, if we want to wait till somebody gets killed, then we can do that. But the fact that there's been some accidents on the road indicates there's some kind of a problem. And so I think we should go ahead. But the last thing I will say is, I've been on this board Board of Selectmen for a long time. I don't ever remember when we've spent any money frivolously, $250,000 or $2 million. And I don't see that changing in this town in the next few years. There's an opportunity, a chance to look at something, to be able to fix it. Town meeting needs to decide, is this something we should do looking forward, or should we do nothing? And that's really the choice. If the town meeting decides that we should pass. But personally, I felt we should bring this forward because these opportunities do not come up very often. And that's why we obviously don't do it very often. So anyways, I would just say, I do believe there's a need. We could move forward on this road. If there wasn't a need, let me just say this, if there wasn't a need, we wouldn't have made the developer on that subdivision rebuild 1,700 feet of that road. If there wasn't a need, the building committee would not have committed to rebuilding 2,600 feet of the road up the other end. So, I mean, I just let you use your own judgment on it, and just ask you to consider it openly. And hopefully at town meeting they'll agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DiPaolo. Actually, Mr. DiPaolo, one question while you're still here. You said the vote of the Board of Selectmen was 4-1. Would you like to let us know the breakdown of that vote, please?
Sure. It was 4-1.
And the one was, please.
Why the one?
Who the one was, please?
Who the one was? Oh, it was Ms. Flynn.
Okay.
And the reason wasn't because she didn't see benefit in it. The reason is because she wasn't sure that this was a higher priority than potentially some other priorities. She didn't disagree that the road needed work. So just a difference of opinion of whether or not it was urgent or not, I guess.
Okay, thank you. The reason I asked is because the recommendation of the selectmen, just like the recommendation of the finance committee, carries more weight when we know why we support this, why we recommend for or why we recommend against, and it's good to know what the rationale is on both sides so we can weigh that also. It's nice to hear, to hear both Mr. DiPello here speaking, on behalf of it, and also letting us know Ms. Flynn's opinion against it. So thank you very much for letting us in on that. Mr. Allen.
Jeff Allen, DPW Director. The Department of Public Works continuously looks to make improvements to our public ways where it's feasible and where we have opportunities. As Mr. DiPaolo said, Lake Street at what used to be the Glavin Center, but now at the Beal School, we made modifications. We were able to take out that curve because we had the opportunity. Purington Street right now, at Route 20, we have the opportunity to fix a safety issue that, in this case, the residents brought to our attention, in which we are actually closing off Purington Street from Route 20 due to the safety concerns at that intersection. So we continuously look to try to make modifications, safety improvements, wherever we possibly can. In the municipal world, it's rare, I agree, and it's difficult to do it just because of right-of-way constraints, house constraints, property constraints. So where we can do it, we at least want to explore the opportunity to try to make those modifications. We have not done a design of it yet. We haven't got that detail, but at this point, it's an opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Hallen. Dennis?
Quick question as you brought that. Did any residents complain about the safety of that street? That live on it? Any residents said that curve needed to be fixed? Residents of the street, not residents of the
Yes,
street.
I think I used that question. Mr. Cahill left, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I asked him that question, and he said they get several calls a year, not a lot, under 10, about when are you going to do something about the road. And he said they did pick up after Beal opened. Now, that could be a little bit of a knee-jerk, but there have been consistent concerns about that road over the years, so yes.
Mark?
And then,
Hold on.
follow-up question.
Yeah.
Was you haven't done the study yet and all that? I mean, I just want to know what kind of open hole we're going to have to fill revenue-wise, funding-wise. Estimate of 500,000. Is it going to be 500,000? Is it going to be 700,000? If this is such a bad curve and it's off canter and all that, there could be a lot of work there. And would that be done by the same crews that are doing the roads now, that have done, like, my street, or is it going to be done by the DPW?
It would, if we were to do a road improvement, it would more than likely be put out to public bid.
Okay.
Have no idea who that would be at this point. We have done a conceptual sketch at best at this time, just to see what we could do to make the improvements to that curve by using design standards in good engineering practice on the design of a curve which it currently does not meet any standards.
Can I take one more follow-up?
Okay, keep it brief, because a bunch of folks here also want to get in on this.
You just said about just started briefly design, so we've never done any design or thought of fixing this in the last 15 or 20 years.
I haven't been here that long.
Or how long have you been here?
I was the town engineer 8 years ago, and then DP director the last 3.
So for the last 8 years, we haven't.
I mean, it's been a thought, but it never came to our attention that the land was even feasible at this, because it was not up for sale.
Everything has a price and is up for sale.
I agree.
Okay. Thank you.
Vikram?
Yes, thank you, Mark. So as far as the accident data that Kristen provided in the email response, do we have any additional data as far as, was it related to any events that may have been happening at the SAC Park at that time, as far as the police reports are concerned? Because I was wondering, is it related to congestion as well? Does it combine with the curve, the intensity of congestion on the traffic, if there's any correlation?
No, there's no indication that there's a congestion issue.
No more
Okay.
questions.
Hannah?
Can you just clarify again, are there any signs there now that indicate, the curve is tough? Is there any signage?
No.
At all? No?
I'm not sure. There could be, but I haven't driven through there to look.
Appears not, according to Ms. Moriando.
Okay, thank you. Rajiv?
No.
Would it be fair to say that right now the question is appropriation of $250,000 to buy something, and we don't know exactly what we're gonna do with it, and we don't know how much the project is gonna cost. Would that be a crude but a fair assessment?
I don't think that's true. I mean, we know what we would do with the property if we acquired it. We would make roadway improvements to it.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I thought we also said at some point that we may actually sell it back if we don't exactly do what we want. Like, it seems like.
I never
It
said
seems like
that,
it's
so.
not defined. If it is, then and what the project cost might be.
Yeah, I mean, the estimate that we have right now is a little over $500,000, but that's below schematic design level. There's a cost to engineer it, and take it to the full level, even with town time, staff time, so. No, I mean, we don't have fully laid plans. That is accurate.
Okay, Ms. Moriando, you want to say something? Come to the mic, though. Thanks.
So the lived experience on Lake Street is that it's a busy street, like any other street that connects two state roads. We don't love it, we don't like it, but we live with it. We're used to traffic. We haven't noticed extra traffic from the opening of the school. By the way, did you know that this property is 1.3 miles away from Beale School? If you took a 1.3 mile radius around any school in Shrewsbury, you're going to find a road with a tricky curve. It's said that we can't fix those curves. Think of Marston Greenhouse on Spring Street. It's said that we can't fix those curves because people own houses. Well, maybe someone would like to sell a little bit of frontage so that you can fix the curve in their neighborhood. Everybody's got a price for something. They could say yes or they could say no. But the notion of fixing the curve a mile and a third away from a school to improve something, you're not going to fix the middle. I don't understand that argument. So further, the point is well made. We don't know what we're going to do, and we could say, well, let's sell the land. Well, then you've burdened us with a $250,000 investment, and maybe that money could go to some other public safety projects, or not. But I don't understand that this is an urgent need for the town. Or a need at any time. If we were really concerned about the safety of that curve at Lake Street, shouldn't we have done something by now? You folks haven't given any data on which to make a decision. It's not just $250,000, as you know. Could be $1 million. Is that appropriate? I hope you reject this proposal. Send it back to the drawing board. Table it for now. It can come up later, possibly. Maybe the guy wants to put a house on it. If he does, he does. But this is not well prepared. And I am glad that I don't have to make a decision on this, because I would not have been given proper information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. DiPaolo, Since you've already spoken a bit today, can you just kind of keep it concise?
I hope this is the last time. I think I made it cause a problem. I had people who asked me about this article ask, well, what if we decide not to do the road? And that was my response to them of, well, if we decide not to do it, town meeting if we buy the land, town meeting doesn't want to appropriate the money, whatever reason, then we could sell it. We could make it available to the trust. That was not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to address the geometry and the configuration of that road. It is not reasonable to expect on a piece of land that we don't own, we don't have under agreement, to have the engineering department or a consulting engineer go out and do a 25% drawing, which is really, that's technical jargon, it's really close to 100% drawing, spend that money to design a road on a piece of land that we don't own. So that's why we don't have that information. And no, we don't have the information on what's going to happen with Market Basket yet. We'll have some information soon on Beale because it'll be open for a while. It's not our fault we didn't have that. This was not on the horizon. This gentleman did not want to sell this land for a number of years. His family, 20 years ago, sold a big piece across the street to see his farm. And the reason he didn't want to sell it is his family goes back to like colonial times. And he was actually conflicted about selling it now, but he was at a point where he felt he needed to. So there was never an opportunity. He never wanted to sell it. This is an opportunity. If we have to do this road section by section, as we have done, up near the school, up by Hemingway, and now this corner, and we also did further down towards Southwind Sig, that thing was reconfigured a number of years ago. And I would just take exception to one thing about a 1 mile radius. Every road that's in a 1 mile radius is not on the same street as a school, and is not a minor arterial that connects two major roads. So I just leave it at that. Thank you. We could go on all night.
Thanks, Mo. Rajiv, go ahead.
One quick question. So, depending on the plans that we have right now, how much of the land would we be using, of the 1.23 acres, to do the road improvement? About, 10%, 50%?
I would say roughly 40%, 30 to 40%. If you look at the map up there, it's Lake Street on the left side. The thickest line on the left side is the property boundary. The curve is the bulge that protrudes to the left side of the screen. So we would start back near the dividing line between those two lots and move the Lake Street basically softer into the right and across the property boundary. So instead of it going up and being sharp, it would ease its way through.
So are you saying you would like cut this out? This section out?
I'm sorry, I didn't realize you're up there. That's correct. Yep.
So,
Okay. Ms. Icardi, you're here. You got to speak, man. You didn't come here for no reason.
I came to see you.
We're glad to have you.
I'd like to say I just came from the high school.
How was the concert?
First concert in person. It was wonderful. It
I hate
was
that I'm
great
missing
to
it.
see them. I want to thank Christina in HR for helping me with some of the items earlier on, so I appreciate that. I think, in my humble opinion, the issue here is less about the end result and more about the process and the technical way we have gotten here. There's certainly skepticism. This is the first day anybody has seen this map. So we get maps in our packets all the time. This was not debated at a select board meeting. We've watched the tapes. It was not debated. It was put on the table. It was voted.
the deadline to submit articles, I question technically, is this a citizen's petition or the board's petition or the town manager's petition? So I'm a little bit concerned about the open meeting issues too. When was this discussed and where?
No.
And it was not at a board meeting
That's not
unless it
true.
was in an executive session.
Nope.
So I'm just saying,
Kevin, you'll get a
Yeah.
chance. I just wanna-
I'm
just wanna
just
hear the
saying,
end of
these
this.
are my questions, because it does not seem clear. Nowhere in the article does it talk about needing design and things like that. We get inundated with materials as town meeting members. It feels like a passing thought. Now, I had a question for you, Mark. Would you be willing to sell a little bit of your frontage on Gulf Street? Because I'll tell you, my daughter clipped a mailbox right near there.
Uh-oh,
and
wasn't
that's
mine, was it?
No, it wasn't. And it's, in my humble opinion, and I would like to see the data from the police department on Gulf Street. There's plenty of properties for sale on Gulf Street right now. So I guess it's how does this come up? Why this one, not others? And does the town, every time a property come up for sale, look at it to say, can we use this? Clearly, we didn't try to purchase the pork chop lots on Floral Street by Violet there. The Pitney's mailbox got clipped by somebody, an elected official in this town too. That's a dangerous curve. All of those properties right on Floral, there was plenty of opportunity to buy one of those lots. Did we do that then? So my only issue is, do I think it's, is this the emergency? Yes, it's an opportunity. I wonder. What I would like to know, and I tried to find the capital improvement program on the webpage, and I couldn't quite find it. What's the next item on the capital improvement plan that's valued at $250,000? So I guess I would ask that question, because we've not been given that priority.
Okay.
So those are my thoughts. I look forward to the debate at, town meeting. I think, I will say, the only feeling I have on this is, if it was, I agree with Suzanne, there were no signs ever put up at this intersection. Ms. Kane brought that up. I don't know the right answer, but I also don't feel that when you read this article, that we're really signing up for paying for an engineering firm to design it. And it seems like we've already done some work, but why isn't that in the article or in the memo in the description? So those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin, did you want to respond to that, please?
Yeah, and I'm sorry I interrupted Ms. Icardi. I take exception to, I guess, some of the innuendo that this was not done in a proper and legal format to get it on the agenda, which isn't the case. The board set the town meeting warrant and signed it in an open public meeting. This was included on it. The board has the opportunity to discuss the acquisition of real property in executive session. That was properly posted, and this lot has been identified. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you. After the public hearing is closed, we're going to go over all the articles, and we'll discuss it among ourselves and make whatever comments and debate we want to make. But is there anything else, any other questions we have for the staff that are here, or anyone else from the public want to speak on this article? Or on any of the other articles, because we're about to close off the public hearing?
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
I was going to ask Lena to do that, actually. She hasn't said much. You want to give her the chance?
She can repeat.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Second.
And Carlos got that. Sorry, Anna. You're usually very good at making our motions. I appreciate that. Is there any further discussion on closing the public hearing? All in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Public hearing is closed. Thank you very much. We will now go to deliberation and action relative to the recommendations. I remind the Finance Committee and anyone watching in our gallery and at home that the actions of the Finance Committee tonight vis-a-vis the special town meeting, these are recommendations that we make to our elected representative town meetings. We have no authority to enact or reject these articles. And I want everyone to know that our recommendations have the most value if we've had a public hearing, if we've had a public discussion, and if we've had an opportunity to ask questions of the staff members involved. I want to talk about some of the ground rules going forward, since we have a shorter town meeting coming up rather than our annual, to try some of these ideas. I believe the committee should not be making a vote on new recommendations, such as amendments at town meeting, during town meeting. The committee may vote if it has already had a public hearing and we're just waiting, say, for some final details to come down. But at a town meeting, we shouldn't be voting unless it's just on details. However,
Sorry,
yeah,
can you just clarify that?
I'll clarify. If an amendment comes up on the floor of town meeting, we haven't had a public hearing on that amendment, we haven't had a public discussion on that amendment, we haven't had an opportunity of the committee, the finance committee, to ask staff or anyone else making the amendment questions. Therefore, I don't think it would be appropriate at town meeting for the finance committee to be voting on a recommendation at that point, because we haven't had any public hearing. In that case, we're just 9 town meeting members who happen to be sitting up there. We have no further information, no greater knowledge, no greater ability than anyone else at town meeting. So I believe it would not be appropriate for us to be acting at that point. Hannah?
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I mean, I've been a town meeting member for almost 20 years, and Finance Committee has always taken a vote when something is on the floor and being proposed, so we have to vote on. I think part of what we bring to the table is a more informed group of people who we might not have heard that particular point before, but we have vetted the articles that are here, we've heard discourse on it, and I think we are, using our own judgment at that point in time as an individual to vote on it. So I think that deviates a lot from what we have historically done, and also the guidance that we're offering at that moment in time. So I would share that I think that what we have done in the past has been valuable to town meeting members who are looking for additional thoughts on how to think about what's been put forward. So my 2 cents.
I understand, and I agree completely. The experience you've had, the experience I've had, I've been a town meeting member for quite a few years myself, and a finance committee member for only a few. I believe that we aren't bringing any special expertise to town meeting on that amendment, on whatever little issue has come up, whether it's significant or not, that our recommendation is going to make the difference. After all, the town meeting members look at us for a recommendation based on the expertise we have, and we have no expertise on an amendment that has just come up. That's any different than any other town meeting member, because we haven't had a public hearing on it, we haven't had a chance to discuss it, we haven't had a chance to ask questions, as we're doing tonight, which is the process that we're doing.
Yeah, I guess, public hearing or not, I think that the knowledge that we bring based on the volume of all the work that we do is something that we are imparting. I think it's also, again, not, it is what finance committees do. I mean, they provide, it's not just our town that looks at doing things this way. I mean, it is the role of finance committee to advise folks on issues that come before us.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. Anyone else want to comment on this? Dennis, go ahead.
If there is an amendment that comes up and we're gonna have to vote on it, I would assume we'd be offered the ability to ask a few questions, as much as we did tonight. And then, I don't know, maybe do we have, I think we did it the last town meeting, a few minutes where we can just discuss real quickly among the finance committee members and make a decision. We each vote individually anyhow, based on our own experience and the knowledge that we either gain from sitting in this meeting now. Really the experience we bring is we get to read we have to go through the amendments. We have to go through the warrants, where not everyone on town meeting has to go through it before they get there. And then we discuss it ahead of time. So I think we should still vote on it.
Okay.
And maybe, people don't wanna, they'll discount our vote because we haven't had as much time, and that's fair. They might discount our vote because they don't agree with it. But I would say we continue to do what we've done in the past.
Would anyone else? Thank you. That's good and useful. Anybody else want to make a comment or chime in on this? Carlos, go ahead.
Yes, I agree with my colleagues. I think that the input that the Finance Committee brings to, excuse me, all the discussions that we have at town meeting is very important and valuable. And as a relatively new town meeting member, you know, I look to the Finance Committee to see, or I looked at the Finance Committee to see their recommendation. I may not have always voted in the same way, but I think that it's important that we still offer our recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Let's hear what other folks want to say on this, if anyone else. You certainly don't have to. Rajiv, did you want to?
I would agree with that in the sense that, I mean, it's, our vote here is no different than our vote there, and the expertise that we have, I think, which is why we're looking at all the other articles, I mean, that shouldn't change.
Okay. Is there a fifth dissent? Because that would certainly solve the question.
I think so too. I think sometimes this is the nature of the job we volunteered for.
Okay.
We have to take a split decision, a quick decision sometimes.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Then perhaps what we could do, I mean, the policy of the committee is, should that come up, I think it would behoove us to, as Dennis said, have a discussion, a public discussion, so that way they can at least see what our deliberation is. Asking, of course, the town manager's leave to take that moment to have that public discussion. But I'd rather that we were doing it in front of the town meeting that we're recommending to, that we're advising, as we are doing right now, because there's no value if we aren't doing it, at least publicly. Then it's just 9 random votes. Okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
With that.
Okay, that's good. So we're going to go through the voting on the articles. Again, these are not motions to pass. These are motions to recommend passage or recommend defeat, but in either way, it's a recommendation. I will attempt to record this as best I can. Bear with me, because I'm just figuring out how to do this. Okay, let's just start at the top and go through it. There are only 16. We should be able to do this. As we will, hold on, before we do, I'm going to say we'll have a motion to recommend or to passage or defeat, and then we will discuss further. It's not just a vote on it right now, but we need to have the motion first, just so you understand the process. Okay, so Hannah,
Make a motion to recommend Article 1.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so Article 1 is the article on setting up the insurance trust fund. Does anyone have any opinions they want to give? Go ahead.
I think it's a good idea. I think it's continuing with what the town manager has been doing in the departments over the last few years of, hopefully simplifying things and making it much easier to do. I think the insurance fund, help us over time sort of even out the expenses. There's gonna be years where we're gonna put more in than we have to, but there'll be a lot of years where we won't have to put any in and we take out of it. I think it's a great idea. Fully support it.
Nicely said. I agree with that rationale completely. Anyone else want to say anything on it? Okay, all in favor of recommending passage of Article 1, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion to recommend passage passes unanimously. This and this. Go ahead.
A motion to recommend Article 2.
Recommend passage of Article 2. Is there a second? Any further discussion? Anybody want to say, or Dennis, since you said it so concisely, is there anything else you want to say on Article 2?
Passing Article 1 makes no sense if we don't pass Article 2. I'm fully in favor of passing Article 2 to fund it.
Can I offer an amendment that in the event that Article 1 is defeated, that we would then recommend defeat of Article 2?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any further discussion? So all in favor of recommending passage of Article 2, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries and unanimously.
Make a motion to approve Article 3.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to recommend passage of Article 3. This is the budget question. Anyone have any comments concerns, questions, recommendations? Seeing none, all in favor of recommending passage of Article 3, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries, and the recommendation is made for passage unanimously.
Make a motion to recommend Article 4.
Second.
Motion and a second to recommend passage of Article 4, which is the first of the water funding articles. Is there any further discussion? Dennis?
Same thing, I think it's a great idea to streamline some of the process. It's not gonna add to our expenses, probably helps us out in the long run, in keeping the budgets down a little bit. So I think it makes sense for all the water-related ones. That's at what, 4, 5, and
We'll get to the others, sewer ones, but yeah, 4 and 5. Any further discussion on Article 4? Hearing none. All in favor of recommending passage of Article 4, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries, and Article 4 is recommended for passage.
Make a motion to recommend Article 5.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for recommending passage of Article 5, which is the second, this is the Sewer Enterprise Fund. Any further discussion on it? Tell me your opinions. What do y'all think? We're good? Okay. Hearing none. All in favor of recommending passage of Article 5, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries, and Article 5 is recommended for passage unanimously.
Make a motion to approve Article 6,
Second.
to recommend Article 6.
You know I was going to catch you on that. There is a motion and a second to recommend passage of Article 6. This is to take the money from the Allen Farm, Centec Park North sale and put some of it, if I'm correct, towards the Tobin Hill Bridge project. It is only part of those funds. Is there a goal for the rest of those funds?
This will pretty much deplete the net proceeds from it. We had a broker's fee to pay, we had mass development grants to repay, and we had $3.6 million in debt to retire.
Okay, so mostly it's to pay off the debt and and then on top of that, the fees.
Correct.
Okay. Discussion, please? You said earlier this was a good deal, and you said you weren't so
No,
sure.
I said the $6 million we spent to buy the land was a good deal.
Oh, okay.
To get this back in return and to protect what we
And I
did.
said it wasn't, but that's old history. Can we,
Okay. I just because I'm thrilled that we're.
I can have this conversation later.
Yeah, I think we've had this conversation a lot actually on this parcel. Okay. Any further discussion on using this money in this way, however?
the question is this bridge is gonna have to be repaired at some point, is my understanding. We're not gonna leave it in disrepair forever.
Yes.
So that being said, I think it's a good use of the money at this point.
Yes. Thank you. Rajiv?
Is it $2 million based on competitive bids, or is it,
So the reconstruction of the bridge is roughly $1.3 million based on 100% design. So it's still a cost estimate. It's not out to bid yet. The remaining funds will be used for structural improvements along Nursery Drive, which is a schematic estimate at this point. The Nursery Drive has interlocking walls that are bulging. So we'd look to make the repairs to that as well.
Kevin, if there's leftover funds from this for one reason or the other, they go to free cash?
No, they would be returned to the real estate's receipts reserved fund and restricted in the same manner.
For these kinds of projects in the same manner, or for what?
It could be used up for projects for which you can borrow for 5 years or longer. So it's a major capital improvement.
Okay, and it would not require town meeting legislation at that
It
point?
would.
Oh, for
Yep.
that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, any further discussion on Article 6? All right, all in favor of recommending passage of Article 6, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carried. Article 6 is recommended unanimously for passage.
Make a motion to recommend Article 7.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to recommend passage of Article 7, which is to use money from these ride-sharing programs to make a tiny contribution to the, these projects listed here. Any further discussion? Anyone want to say anything? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor of recommending passage of Article 7, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries, and Article 7 is recommended for passage unanimously.
I make a motion to recommend Article 8.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to recommend Article 8, which is to work on the Oak School windows. Is there any discussion on that, please? Seeing none, all in favor of recommending passage of Article 8, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries, and Article 8 is recommended unanimously for passage.
I make a motion to recommend Article 9.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to recommend passage of Article 9, which is to clean up this exemption for trustees, conservatorships, and such. Any discussion, recommendation, arguments for or again?
No, this is basically just making everyone equal under the law.
Yep. Anyone else? All right, seeing no other discussion, all in favor of recommending Article 9 for passage, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Article 9 is, the motion is carries, and Article 9 is recommended for passage unanimously.
I make a motion to recommend Article 10.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to recommend passage of Article 10, which is to create effectively a special reserve fund for the sewer department. Any discussion? I think it's a great idea. I'll just say that right off the top. No other discussion? All right, all in favor of recommending passage of Article 10, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes, and Article 10 is recommended for passage.
I make a motion to recommend Article 11.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to recommend Article 11 for passage. Article 11 funds that special stabilization account. A special reserve fund, excuse me. Any discussion on the funding of this account through Article 11? All in favor then of recommending passage of Article 11, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries, and Article 11 is recommended unanimously for passage.
Make a motion to recommend Article 12.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to recommend passage of Article 12, which is the first of our planning articles. This one is to make a zoning district change on Lake Street, that tiny little sliver of land just across from the school. Any questions? Problems, difficulties? Okay. All in favor of recommending Article 12 for passage, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries, and Article 12 is recommended unanimously for passage.
I make a motion to recommend Article 13.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to recommend passage of Article 13, which is the open-air opportunities for restaurants in the zoning categories. Is there any discussion, support, or again? All right, seeing none, all in favor of recommending passage of Article 13, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Article 13 is recommended for passage.
Make a motion to recommend Article 14.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to recommend Article 14 as amended, sent to us today. Just because you had your hand up, was that what that was?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, this is not the one that's in our packet. Can you, actually, Kristen, forgive me, what's difference here between
Sure.
what everyone got home and what we were sent today?
So I'm referring to the memorandum to town meeting members dated October 8th, page 17. Number 3, which is towards the top of that page, B, special permit granted under this zoning bylaw shall expire within 5 years of the date of issuance of the permit will be omitted from the revised motion.
So it will just be an A.
That is correct.
All right. Thank you very much. Any discussion, any questions, any complaints, recommendations, or opposition? All right, all in favor of recommending Article 14 as amended, no, not as amended, as sent to us through a substitute motion, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Motion carries, and Article 14 is recommended unanimously for passage. Article 15.
I make a motion to recommend Article 15.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to recommend Article 15 for passage. It is dealing with amending the inclusionary housing bylaw. Is there any discussion thereof? Any questions or problems? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of recommending Article 15 for passage, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Article 15 is recommended for passage. Article 16.
I make a motion to not recommend Article 16.
That would be a motion to recommend defeat.
So I make a motion to recommend defeat.
Second.
There is a motion and a second to recommend defeat of Article 16.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Judy.
Thank you, Hannah, for that motion. As I said, I don't think that this is a good idea because I think that it's setting a poor precedence. I'm not sure it went through. I think there's a good points made about going through the vetting process of other projects. You know, obviously I already spoke about the unintended consequences of straightening the road. It doesn't look like other means of putting up signs. If it had been a major issue, I think signage should have been put up here a number of years ago. So I do think that, you know, the purchase price and then the development price of it and so forth, that's why I'm against this project.
Thank you, Judy. Anyone else?
Mark?
Vikram?
I think I would have to disagree, primarily because I think that a perfect plan tomorrow is not possible as opposed to a good plan today. There is definitely issues with this road in terms of and I agree basically there should have been signs up, and that's a different topic as to why it wasn't there. But prevention is better than a cure, and this lot of land, if we do purchase it, is not a depreciable asset. So if we do not basically purchase it, we may not have the data in time to actually purchase the property, if that's the point I'm trying to make. So I actually think, I agree with the recommendation that we should basically purchase this land and go ahead with it, yes. That's my stand.
Anna?
So, you know, in a perfect world with lots of resources, you know, this wouldn't be an issue for me, but I just spent 5 years working with MassDOT on Route 20, which has a very high crash incident rate. To think about 250 plus 500,000 at least, thinking of 750,000 to put towards Route 20. I mean, we've spent time trying to get federal funding. Congressman McGovern's worked with us to get money at this. So I'm just looking at, we have a huge financial nut on that road that we're gonna have to put money into as a town. We're not gonna get all state and federal money for it. And I know the crash data and that we have done everything we can at this point to mitigate these things. So for me, I'm looking at, should we spend this money here or should we spend it on another area, which I think, so it's not that I don't think this might have merit in the scheme of things, but what I also don't know is what were the other things that we could have done? Like, what were the other projects in town that maybe should have also, you know, to the earlier point, you know, Spring Street School, that corner on Spring Street is a dangerous one as well if you're going. So For me, I'm making it based on where I would rather see us as a town invest dollars into transportation safety, into traffic safety issues. So I just want, that's my thinking.
Dennis?
Yeah, that's part of my thinking is that there is where could that money best be spent. The second issue I do have is that road has had that curve forever. Never had any signage. I don't see any evidence of a lot of traffic, complaints, et cetera, there. I would like to see, signage put there. If we miss an opportunity, we've missed an opportunity, but we can't just spend $250,000 on every opportunity we see. Because if we could, I have a lot of opportunities that I think throughout town are also deserving. The other thing I will say is I know they weren't required to do the studies all the way down Lake Street, all the way through, when they put in the market basket and when they put in the school. But if it was such an issue of a curve turn, I would think someone would have thought to do that. So one of our public, Department of Public Works, police, whatever, would have thought that, hey, if we're gonna do this, we should probably put some money in 5 years ago to fix that curve. So from my opinion, it's come on pretty fast. I'm sure they did it correctly. There was a comment they may not have. I doubt that happened. They did it correctly. I just think the opportunity came up quickly. We're finding about it quickly, and I'm not sure that's the best use of the money.
Thank you. Other opinions for or against?
I would agree with that. Not only the 250, I think, is not the best use of the money. The opportunity cost lost there, and we don't even know what that is at this point. We are not looking at it from that perspective. And plus, I think there's a certain level of how much it's going to cost. Yes, we have an estimate of 750, but still, it's not a well.
Okay, thank you. Any other opinions? Any other discussion? Carlos?
I agree with what's been said. I think I would have appreciated more feedback from the abutters and the neighborhood about this curve. I just would have appreciated that. And also, I think that traffic calming measures should have been in place years ago if it was a big concern. Signage and painting the roads, I think, would have been something that we should have done a while ago. So I'm also against Article 16.
Thank you. Any other opinions or discussion? Okay, I just want to say, Mary, I was going to talk about Gulf Street anyway. I mean, I live on a street that's a access road to the high school, and the high school kids drive on it. Field school kids ain't driving. So I've definitely seen a lot of crazy driving on the street, and I have on my street, just like on every other street, especially the old streets in town, crazy turns, many of them off camber because they worked great for the horse and buggy. And I think traffic calming measures are a great way to go, or at least a great way to start. This is a good opportunity, and honestly, 250 is a reasonable amount, and I'm glad to see that we're looking at this as a chance to solve a problem and prevent a problem. We don't always have the opportunity to prioritize all of our spending. Sometimes things come up and you can't get to the things you want to get because you've only got the things that you have to get. But I think traffic calming measures would work as a better solution, or at least to start with. And what also concerns me is that if we were to do this work, then people are just gonna drive faster. I'm a big fan of people slowing down because of bad curves, not zipping through good curves. I hope we don't regret this, and I want everyone to take that into consideration, but I also think that we should recommend defeat of this article. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of recommending defeat of Article 16, I'm going to ask a show of hands because we're divided, and I want the audience to know who's for and who's against. So this is to recommend defeat of Article 16. Please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, me. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and thank you very much. And all in favor, all opposed to recommending defeat of Article 16, please raise your hand. Okay. The motion to recommend defeat passes by an 8-1 vote. Since we are divided, I think it would behoove town meeting to hear from someone, if anybody wants to speak on behalf of the 8, and if anybody wants to speak, that would be you, on behalf of the 1. Please let me know, say before. No, actually, we can decide right now. Would anybody like to take the opportunity at town meeting to represent the Finance Committee's opinion on Article 16? You don't have to, and we can just simply say we recommend defeat, and that's fine.
I guess I would just leave it if somebody wants to know why, but, you know,
If asked.
Yeah.
Okay. And Vikram, would you be interested in speaking at town meeting on your opinion or not?
I may not be able to attend this,
Okay.
this Monday. meeting.
Well, I will certainly let town meeting know what the vote is and what the reason was. Okay, thank you. All right, and based on that, we are now done with deliberating and acting relative, et cetera, et cetera. Question number 4 on our agenda. Now, at 9:45, let's go to the town manager's report. I'm sure you've got a very long and detailed report to give us. Ms.
I have
Carr.
nothing.
Okay, great. That's what I wanted to hear. Let's review the meeting schedule. As you all know, we have a special town meeting on the 18th, that's a Monday, right? Yeah, that's a Monday. We are actually scheduled to be on the stage, Gannett Oak, our old haunts. And quorum will be lower, down to what now, please, Kevin?
Quorum was lowered to 100.
100. Well, we should still have no trouble hitting that. Anyhow, hope to see you all there, but we, as a Finance Committee, will be meeting. For the new folks, just want to remind you, we usually meet, and we are actually meeting, Alexandra, we posted 15 minutes ahead of time, right? So at 6:45, please meet on the stage at Oak. We won't have any business to handle, but that's what we do. So if something new comes up, hey, we've got 4 days to deal with it, and we'll deal with it then, okay? So that's the 18th. The next meeting after that is November 18th, which is our traditional third Thursday of the month. Is that how we do it, third Thursday of the month? And I've got a special project coming up for you. Kevin and I talked this week, I think. We're gonna get a little lesson on how OPEB works and doesn't work and all the great things about it, and kind of a nice overview of OPEB, not in terms of this year's budgeting process, but rather the larger picture, what it is, how we're involved, how the selectmen handle it, how the town handles it, and so forth. This is going to try to make a regular feature of our Finance Committee meetings going forward, where we'll kind of get an overview lesson towards the end of our meetings on some topic. It won't be very long, but it will be a nice opportunity for us to all learn about it. This isn't just for one member or another, it's for me, so I can learn about it better, and so all of you can too. So the public is welcome to come and ask questions too, but it won't be formally a public hearing, but it will be an opportunity to learn about OPEB. Other post-employment benefits, in case you're all wondering what I was rambling about. So that'll be on November 18th, and then meeting after that, December 16th. I don't know what topic, actually, Kevin and I were brainstorming. We have a whole bunch of opportunities that we might discuss at that meeting, and I don't know if we'll have business then, but it's on the calendar. Is there any other business that we have to attend to that would fall under this category? Hannah's shutting her computer, so that means no. All right. And we have a whole lot of correspondence. It's been a busy month. We got an email from Beth McCollum inviting us all to the lovely opening of Beale, the lovely long opening at Beale, but it was fun. It was nice to see the building. It's a wonderful building. Email about local receipts from Mr. Mizikar. Email from Bernie Cahill about the articles we dealt with tonight. Details from Beth McCollum about that opening, and an email from Ms. Moriando about Article 16 that we handled. I just want to thank you all very much for working with me on my first. I'm really trying to do the best I can here, folks.
You did a great job.
And I also want to say, y'all talked me down from something I wanted to do, and that's awesome. That is freaking awesome. I'm thrilled. That is just how I wanted it to happen. So I'm glad we had that discussion, we spoke about it, and that's great. So,
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All in favor, aye. Motion carries. Let's get out of here.